Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening, Taki-chan. Stop it. The Soyo on the screen just wanted to yell at Taki to stop making things worse. The Soyo outside the screen, remembering it now, only felt her blood pressure soar. She had been so close to convincing Sakiko. If it weren't for this pig-headed teammate making a mess, perhaps everything would have been different. If you're going to quit, can you at least not make things difficult for us? We waited for you today. Ricky. You all managed without me, didn't you? Hearing Sakiko's now cold tone, Soyo didn't know what she was thinking back then. All she knew was that right now, she felt completely numb. And with Taki's assault, Sakiko's emotions seemed to detonate, and she started blaming Tamari directly. Tamari was waiting for you. As Tamari's guard, Taki unsurprisingly exploded as well, and the two almost came to physical blows. Wait a minute. Let's just talk this through, okay? The Soyo on the screen was clearly at her wit's end, but for the sake of the band's stability, she could only smile and act as the peacemaker. We were all having so much fun before. Mentally and physically exhausted in less than a minute, Soyo tried to bring in reinforcements, hoping Mutsumi would bail her out. Mutsumi-chan thinks so too, right? Watching the on-screen Soyo look at Mutsumi Wakaba with an expectant face, the real Soyo couldn't help but clench her fists. That was probably the decision she regretted most in her life. Mutsumi Wakaba was not the unifier of Krychek, but its gravedigger. It was she who had made the wrong decision, trusting the untrustworthy Mutsumi, which led to Sakiko's departure and the disbandment of Krychek. As expected, it was all her fault. And Mutsumi Wakaba, living up to expectations, delivered the final blow that shattered Krychek. Have never had fun playing in a band. Precious Mutsumi, be gentle. As the cucumber sword princess in the anime delivered the fatal blow, Kamijo Matsumi's arm was squeezed painfully by the real one. Mutsumi. Seeing this, she quickly let go, but looked at him with a resentful expression. This. Why did you have to film this? Although she had said it to cover for Sakiko at the time, she had actually felt guilty about her words ever since. Now, seeing the famous scene play out, she naturally felt awful. Adaptation is not random fabrication. Artistic license is not nonsense. Kamijo Matsumi said, having his excuse ready. When making an anime, you have to respect the facts. Chapter 38. No, you really don't need to be this respectful. And also, this is a complete reenactment of that scene, isn't it? As her emotions gradually stabilized, Mutsumi Wakaba also sensed that something was amiss. Although Kamijo Matsumi had said the anime would be based on Krychek's experiences, wasn't this level of fidelity a bit too high? She would have believed him if he'd said he was there on the scene with a camera. The most crucial point was, Mutsumi, how do you know all this so clearly? How could he know so much about what happened with Krychek? Did Tamori and the others tell him? But even she, who had lived through it, couldn't remember all the details of that day now. How could he, based on just word of mouth, possibly recreate that scene so perfectly, down to the exact expressions on the girls' faces? I was there. I was the guitar in your hands, precious Mutsumi. In response to her question, he replied with a perfectly straight face. For a split second, Mutsumi Wakaba genuinely wondered if he was her guitar come to life. But she quickly turned her head away, not wanting to get entangled in his question. Whatever secrets he had, they had nothing to do with her. She only needed to know that he was her fiancé and that he treated her well. That was enough. Meanwhile, Miss Sakiko felt like her buried memories were launching a full-scale assault on her. She had already cut ties with the past. Why was she being forced to relive that experience? And Kamijo Matsumi, did you film this on location? It's so accurate. However, the weak me from the past is already dead. These are just some memories I'm unwilling to face. They're not enough to defeat me. The girl wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, her gaze becoming resolute once more. Saki-chan. Tamori also had a complicated expression. Even with a new beginning, the past was clearly not something that could be easily forgotten. Among the former members of Krychek, perhaps only Taki was not experiencing major psychological fluctuations. She just thought Sakiko was being ridiculous and had even been mean to her Tamari. On that point, even Kamijo Matsumi was better than her. Although that guy wasn't a good person, he truly doted on Tamari and had never said a harsh word to her. So this is what happened to them before? The only two Yuri outsiders, Anon and Rana, watched the scene. Anon stroked her chin, a thoughtful expression on her face. Although she knew some of it, hearing it described was nothing like seeing it with her own eyes. But wow, Soyo's behavior is really heavy. Why does she care so much about Sakiko? It had clearly exceeded the bounds of a normal bandmate relationship. After all, even Tamori, whose gravity attribute was so prominent, wasn't as overt about it as her. However, she soon had no mental energy to ponder these things. As the scene in the anime changed, a pink-haired figure appeared on the screen. Anon instantly recognized the girl's identity. It was herself. To make matters worse, the anime was showing her at the airport. Oh no. Don't tell me my story as the deserter of Britain is really going to be exposed? To her relief, the airport scene was just a quick flash, and it soon cut to Hanioka Academy, to her conversation with the principal. Anon breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it's not exposed, it's fine. Then, she watched as her anime self passed the principal's interview and met Tamari, who was collecting pet rocks. A faint smile unconsciously appeared on her face. But soon, as if she remembered something, the smile on her face froze. Dude, how do you know the story between me and Tamari so clearly? Even the lines are exactly the same. Did Tamari tell him? That shouldn't be right. Don't tell me you actually installed a hidden camera on me? While Anon was lost in her confusion, the plot of the anime on the TV didn't stop for her thoughts but continued to advance. The on-screen Anon, having just passed the interview, officially started school, introduced herself to her new classmates, and met Tamari again. However, watching Tamari proactively greet Anon and introduce herself, Taki's heart soured with jealousy. Tamari wasn't that proactive when we first met. What's so great about that pink-haired girl? And the pink-haired girl she was annoyed with was now starting to sweat profusely again. She even felt that the amount she had been sweating lately could qualify her to run for leader of the Revolutionary Army. This was because the anime not only reenacted her previous experiences but also revealed her inner thoughts. Holy cow. Not only did you install a hidden camera on my body, but you also put a listening device in my brain, didn't you? At this point, the Anon in the anime was already talking to the traffic light trio about forming a band. The guitar? So. That means I have to stand in the corner? The on-screen Anon showed a clear aversion to her position in the corner, politely refusing them with a fake smile. However, the real Anon couldn't smile. It's over. My vain, attention-seeking personality has been exposed. Most importantly, what if the traffic light trio also watched the anime and found out she had rejected them because she couldn't be in the center position? After all, even if some things are tacitly understood, saying them out loud is a completely different matter. But while Anon was still panicking, the anime dealt her another blow. Her on-screen self had already returned home after school and was now having a flashback. That's right, a flashback to her time studying in England. In the memory, she was wearing her UK school uniform, holding a white piece of paper, and standing dazedly in a classroom. Then, for some reason, she suddenly closed her eyes and crumpled the paper in her hand into a ball. Afterward, the camera moved behind her, giving a close-up of her tightly clenched fist. Finally, the screen returned to the present. However, although it was only a flashback of a few short seconds, Anon was completely and utterly stunned. Normally, with the lack of information, viewers would only be confused and wouldn't guess her identity as the deserter of Britain. Yes, under normal circumstances. If Kamijo Matsumi hadn't sung that song earlier, Anon suspected that he had a grudge against her. Why was he always targeting her? Why did she have so much screen time? She suspected that if the anime continued to air, all her little secrets and schemes would probably be completely exposed. As Anon thought this, the development of the anime did not disappoint. The on-screen Anon took out her dust-covered guitar and began to practice. However, the skill level she displayed. Even a dog would shake its head upon seeing it. After all, her original guitar level was just barely passable. Combined with the long time she hadn't practiced, she was basically no different from a beginner. Alright. After her little schemes, her guitar skills have now also been exposed. Chapter 39. But thanks to Kamijo Matsumi's item-assisted race, she could at least play now, unlike before when she knew nothing at all. If I just work a little harder from now on, my skills will improve, right? Yeah, not a big problem. Probably. Speaking of items, however, Anon couldn't help but think of the sticker he had given her yesterday. Any normal person would know that thing was not normal. Modern science shouldn't have advanced to that level, right? Or could it be that fantastical things like magic really existed in this world? Kamijo Matsumi's true identity. Is he a magician? Otherwise, it would be hard to explain how he could produce something like yesterday's sticker, which clearly wasn't a product of science. Thinking of this, Anon suddenly felt like she had realized something. If his identity as a magician was confirmed, then did that mean her previous suspicions were true? Did he use magic or some kind of superpower to monitor me all this time, which is why he knows my past so clearly? Wait, don't tell me he's still monitoring me right now. Goosebumps rose all over Ano-chan's body, and she looked around with suspicion and uncertainty. On the other side, Miss Taki was staring at the TV screen with the weary, bewildered expression of someone who has seen too much weirdness on the internet. Seriously, sis, with your skill level, you dare to form a band and even want to be the center? Who gave you the courage? But that's not right. She performed so brilliantly yesterday, at a near-professional level. So is the content of the anime all fictional? But then she recalled Miss Anon's disastrous performance today, and Taki fell silent again. So what on earth is the deal with this girl? Taki-chan was completely confused. At this moment, the anime scene had switched to Anon officially rejecting the traffic light trio. This made Ano-chan, who was still worrying about whether he was monitoring her, look even more guilty. After all, the reason she gave for rejecting them was completely different from her real thoughts. If they saw this, it would be truly embarrassing. Anon could only hope that her friends didn't have a habit of watching anime. After that came the scene where she hit on the rich girl next door. The former members of Krychik finally learned that Anon had actually met Sakiko before. This girl wasn't just after Tamari, she even wanted to hit on Great God Saki. Watching the on-screen Great God Saki reject Miss Anon, who was flirting with every pretty girl in sight, Soyo felt a mix of disappointment and slight relief. She was disappointed because if Anon had really managed to hook up with Sakiko, her grand plan to revive Krychik would have been halfway to success. She was relieved because if Sakiko, who had been pushing her away, was so easily won over by Anon, she truly didn't know how she would feel. However, Sakiko is studying at Hanyoka now? Having obtained this crucial piece of information from the anime, a slightly excited expression appeared on Soyo's face. She finally had a way to contact Sakiko, aside from through Matsumi Wakaba and Kamijo Matsumi. Meanwhile, Great God Saki felt a sudden chill for some reason, as if something bad had just happened. However, no matter how much she thought about it, she couldn't figure out why. She could only suppress her unease and continue watching the anime. Back on screen, Anon, having failed to win over the blue-haired young lady, was walking down the school hallway after a conversation with her classmates, saying the words that once again made her sweat profusely. I didn't really want to have a serious band. There was nothing wrong with this sentence itself. After all, at this age, don't most people form bands just for fun? But what kind of band was she in now? Needless to say, there was Tamari, the queen of gravity who would talk about being together for a lifetime at the drop of a hat. The other two were contenders of a similar caliber. If her true thoughts were exposed, could she expect any good to come of it? However, contrary to her expectations, Tamari, who should have been the most displeased, didn't seem to mind. So what if the anime was depicting events that really happened? Compared to that, she trusted what she felt, and she trusted Anon more. In fact, Tamari's thinking was not wrong. Mere words don't mean much. A certain someone kept talking about a community of fate, but how did that turn out in the end? Soyo didn't care either. All she wanted was the original Krychik. It was better for Anon to think this way. When she got tired of it, she would quit on her own, which would save her the trouble of having to find a way to kick her out later. The only one who was seeing red was probably Miss Taki. This girl. Is this the kind of frivolous attitude she has towards forming a band? Being in a band with Tamari is for a lifetime, damn it. This frivolous woman. I'll definitely have to teach her a good lesson later on Tamari's behalf. Her gaze became even darker, especially after seeing this player immediately set her sights on Tamari after being rejected by the rich young lady. In the anime, Anon was staring at Tamari so intently that she didn't notice the garbage bag at her feet and tripped. The single-threaded Tamari, seeing this, immediately abandoned her and ran off to get a band-aid. After that, naturally, came the astronomy club scene. Watching Tamari enthusiastically show Anon her penguin band-aids, Taki's heart soured with jealousy again. My Tamari. Subsequently, watching Anon take out the notebook with the Haruokage lyrics, the girls all had complicated expressions on their faces. I don't have a band anymore. When asked by Anon if she had a band, Tamori replied in a low voice. Really? A clearly happy expression appeared on the girl's face, which made Soyo's fists harden. Does the disbandment of Krychik make you this happy? Although she knew that probably wasn't what Anon meant, she couldn't help but think it. Then do you want to form one with me? I'll be the lead guitarist and vocalist. You can pick any of the other spots. Her words made the other girls watching the anime feel a bit strange. Seriously, sis? Don't you have any self-awareness about your own skill level? Lead guitarist and vocalist. I think you look like a guitar. If I can get the class mascot, it will definitely attract people. Anon's ulterior motive was exposed, which made Taki furious again. I knew it. This girl has ill intentions towards Tamari. My empress, this woman is no good. Only I am truly loyal to you. Favoring the petty and distancing the virtuous. This is the chaos of the band. I must honor the empress and punish the traitor, to let her know who the true loyal subject is. However, faced with Anon's invitation, Tamari's eyes clearly filled with sadness. She lowered her head slightly. I don't want to. Is that so? Anon was a little surprised by the rejection but didn't press the issue. Then let's just forget it. Chapter 40. However, Anon's invitation seemed to flip some kind of switch in Tamari. The expression on the girl's face grew even more emo. Even if we form a band, we'll just fail again. The camera gave a close-up of Tamari's clenched fist. Tamari. Watching her like this, Taki couldn't help but feel a pang of heartache. However, compared to her, another girl's heart was even more touched. I'm sorry, Tamari. Sakiko whispered, her lips nearly bleeding from how hard she was biting them as she watched the sad Tamari on the screen. Of all the people she hurt by quitting Krychek, the one she felt most guilty towards was probably this cute, dazed girl who was like a small animal. I'm so sorry. But all she could do now was apologize to that girl in sorrow, when she was all alone like this. Her so-called strength was just a fake lace mask, she didn't even have the courage to truly face her. At this moment, the scene in the anime changed. Amidst the scene of Anon pulling Tamari outside, there was also a shot of Sakiko watching from behind a window. And then, the camera moved to Tsukinamori Girls' Academy. That's right. Next up, it was Soyo and Matsumi Wakaba's turn. Seeing this, Anon let out a huge sigh of relief. Finally, it's someone else's turn. If it kept going, all of her little secrets were going to be completely exposed by Kamijo Matsumi. But on second thought, hadn't enough been exposed already? Forget it. I give up. Whatever happens, happens. Matsumi-chan. In the anime, Soyo was sitting in a pavilion at Tsukinamori, staring at something in the distance. Seeing Matsumi Wakaba approach, a smile instantly appeared on her face. Sorry to bother you before your club activity, but there's something I wanted to talk to you about. Sit down. Matsumi Wakaba didn't sit, just stood there looking at her. Has Saki-chan contacted you? Soyo didn't mind her standing. She didn't even bother to pretend, getting straight to the point. Matsumi Wakaba, likely used to this, simply shook her head. I see. Soyo said, turning her head to the side. I thought that since you grew up with her, you'd be able to get her to reply. Soyo walked to the side and, with her back to Matsumi, began her daily psychological manipulation, her words filled with concern for Sakiko. However, great god Saki herself was likely not moved in the slightest. Seriously, sis, why are you so obsessed with me? What part of me do you even like? Tell me, so I can change it. Soyo, clinging to the past band and her carefree self, was like a mirror to Sakiko, forcing her to see her own former naivety. Just looking at her was a huge mockery for Sakiko. That was why, even though Soyo had shown her nothing but goodwill, her only response was rejection. At this moment, great god Saki was like a hedgehog, tightly curled up, keeping all of others' emotions outside her sharp spines, whether they were well-intentioned or malicious. If only I had pressed her a little more. I'm sorry, Matsumi-chan. As if she felt she had said the wrong thing, Soyo turned and hugged Matsumi Wakaba. It's not your fault. In reality, this was just a further step in her psychological manipulation. In her subconscious, she had always held a grudge against Matsumi for what she had said back then. And that dissatisfaction had finally been vented yesterday after Sakiko's rejection. Therefore, watching this scene now, the real Soyo felt her own face sting as if it had been hit by a boomerang. Sakiko also saw through Soyo's true intentions at a glance and rubbed her temples with a headache. Has Matsumi-chan been facing this kind of pressure all along? Remembering her own cold attitude towards the situation, she suddenly felt that perhaps she had been too harsh on her childhood friend. After Soyo finished her manipulation of Matsumi, the scene switched to Ring, showing a conversation between Taki and Ririko. For efficiency's sake, the lines for such minor characters were temporarily voiced by Fun Animation's current go-to voice actress, Sakaki Shizuka. Although the girl was not yet famous, her skills were undeniable. Tamari-chan. In Tamari's home, her mother, Mrs. Takamatsu, noticed her sitting on the sofa watching anime, a surprised expression on her face. You're? After all, in her eyes, her daughter who liked rocks and woodlice was basically cut off from all normal hobbies, let alone something like anime. Therefore, seeing the scene before her, she was naturally surprised. This is Matsumi's anime. In response to her mother's question, Tamori replied without turning her head. It wasn't just because of him. At this point, she had become genuinely interested in the anime herself. After all, the content within wasn't just a story, but something that had really happened around her. Watching her own story from a third-person perspective felt very strange and wonderful. And as she watched, she felt that the distance between herself, Anon, and the others seemed to shrink. Matsumi? Mrs. Takamatsu sat down beside her daughter. Before she could even process the meaning of her daughter's words, her attention was captured by the anime on the screen. The two of us. Can we use a coupon? The on-screen Anon was talking to the waitress. Although Mrs. Takamatsu found the pink-haired girl quite likable, what really caught her attention wasn't her, but the gray-haired girl in a Hanyoka uniform behind her. And this girl. She recognized her. That's right. Wasn't that her own Tamari right beside her? Her own daughter had appeared in an anime. This was a completely unexpected turn of events, and even as an adult, Mrs. Takamatsu was completely stunned. Tamari-chan, what on earth is going on? She felt that something she was completely unaware of had happened to her daughter, and she urgently wanted answers. Tamori naturally wouldn't hide it from her mother. Although her explanation was a bit halting, Mrs. Takamatsu, who was a level 10 expert in Tamori language, was still able to extract the information she wanted. This was an anime made by a friend of Tamori's named Matsumi, based on real life. Her daughter was one of the real-life people, which was why her likeness appeared in the anime. Furthermore, she was one of the voice actresses for it. To prevent her mother from having any misunderstandings, she even took out the salary she had yet to spend. That thick stack of Fukazawa yukikas. Even Mom Mori was shocked to see it. A rich young lady, named Matsumi, who likes anime and comes from a wealthy family. Mrs. Takamatsu quickly formed a rough image of Kamijo Matsumi. After all, his name sounded gender-neutral, and since she had never imagined her daughter's social circle would include a member of the opposite sex, she had misunderstood Kamijo Matsumi's gender. Chapter 41. Tamari's family situation was relatively ordinary among the members of Krychik. Mrs. Takamatsu naturally didn't have any thoughts of social climbing, but she was a little worried about her daughter hanging out with such a high-class young lady. After all, as an adult, she knew that the circles of different social classes were clearly defined. Forcibly entering a world that wasn't your own could only lead to getting hurt. However, remembering the reliance and trust her daughter showed when she spoke of that Matsuki, Mrs. Takamatsu suppressed her worries. She believed in her daughter. Ms. Matsuki must be a very good person, right? Turning her gaze back to the TV, the scene had already switched to Sumami, with Miss Anon selecting a song. A video that could be easily found in a karaoke box naturally didn't need to be voiced over by the members themselves. In any case, Kamijo Matsumi had already spoken with the two girls' agency and paid the licensing fees. So, there would be no problem. Faced with Anon's request for a duet, Tamori naturally refused. Miss Ano seemed to sense Tamari's low spirits and smoothly brought up her old band. Then, the two of them started talking about the reason for the band's disbandment. Could it be because of different musical aspirations? Miss Anon offered her own theory. I don't think so. Tamori replied, her voice growing even lower. It was probably my fault. Hearing Tamari's self-blaming words, a certain girl clenched her fists. No, it's not Tamari's fault. It's all my fault. Tamori doesn't need to blame herself. She should be blaming me, the irresponsible one. The girl had only wanted to cut ties with her past, she had never wanted to hurt anyone. Especially not the dazed, lovable girl she had found, who was like a small animal. Is that so? That's really sad. Anon fiddled with the song selection tablet in her hand, replying as if she were distracted. Tamari's eyes dimmed even further. But, you just have to work hard so you don't fail next time, right? The girl had, at some point, put down the tablet in her hand, and even her tone had become a bit gentler. Eh? Tamori lifted her head, her magnificent, amber-like eyes widening. Ah. Otherwise, life is so long, how can you get through it? Next, naturally, was Saint Anon's talk therapy session. Maybe next time you'll run into a miracle, find even better teammates. Not that I'm talking about myself. But I hope you can continue to be in a band. My love is great and needs no further explanation. With her high emotional intelligence as a trendy girl, combined with her standard yasashe, gentle, nature, even the more withdrawn Tamari after Krychik's disbandment was touched to her core. Even Taki had to admit that this pink-haired girl had something to her. For the sake of her comforting Tamari, she would temporarily forgive her previous frivolous words and actions. Of course, only temporarily. Mrs. Takamatsu, watching the pink-haired girl console her daughter, also felt her fondness for her grow immensely. She wasn't wrong. This was a very likable girl. And Tamari seemed to have said that this girl named Anon was also her friend in real life. With her daughter having a friend like this, she could finally rest a little easier. Then, looking at the pink-haired girl smiling gently at her, Tamari's heart was finally opened. Then, under the surge of this emotion, she made an invitation that made the expression on Miss Anon's face freeze instantly. Can you be in a band with me for a lifetime? Gravity field deployed. A gravitational pull like that of a black hole pressed the pause button on the anime's scene. Under the spinning LED lights was the awkward face of a certain pink-haired girl. In fact, it wasn't just Anon, even Tamari's mom couldn't hold it together. Wait, is my daughter this heavy? Throwing around a lifetime at the drop of a hat, and to another girl, no less. Oh no. It was as if Tamari's mom remembered something. Don't tell me my daughter's orientation is. Thinking of this, Mrs. Takamatsu couldn't help but look at her daughter with worry. After a moment of non-still footage, Anon forced a smile and spoke with uncertainty. A lifetime? Seriously, sis? I just wanted to form a casual band for fun. Isn't a lifetime a bit too heavy? It was as if she had found a girl she got along with and wanted to hang out, only for the other person to pull out a marriage certificate the next second. Looking at the girl's forced smile, Tamari seemed to realize something, and her eyes visibly dimmed. Then she picked up her bag and fled. As expected. A frivolous woman like you can only hurt Tamari. Watching the on-screen Tamari run away in disarray, the sliver of goodwill Taki had developed for Anon was instantly wiped out. Being in a band with Tamari means you have to be prepared for a lifetime. What's with that expression on your face? Don't tell me you just wanted to play around? Taki realized that her initial assessment of this woman was not wrong at all. What a terrible woman. Tamari-chan. In the anime, Anon, seeing Tamari run away, also stood up, as if surprised by her reaction. And the real Anon, watching this scene, felt more regret than anything. After all, even though a lifetime was a bit much for her, wasn't she on this pirate ship now anyway? If I had known it would turn out like this, I should have just agreed to her proposal back then. If I had just tried a little harder, gritted my teeth a little more, wouldn't I have won her over? How could Kamijo Matsume have had the chance to intercept her midway and take advantage of the situation? Thinking of the now obvious difference in Tamari's attitude towards the two of them, Anon's heart ached uncontrollably. Wah, I was here first. My Tamari. Tamari-chan, wait. And in the anime, seeing Tamari run away, Anon also chased after her. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have laughed. The slightly out-of-breath girl said. It's okay. I was the one who said something strange first. Unfortunately, the wrong route had been chosen. It was too late for Anon to try and make amends. Thank you for inviting me to be in your band. But I'm sorry. With that, Tamari gave Anon a deep bow. Tamari-chan. Anon said, seeing this, seeming to want to say something more. But Miss Taki, seeing this from the side, thought Tamari was being bullied and immediately ran over to perform her filial duty. Who are you? What do you want? You're asking me? Are you an acquaintance of hers? Faced with Taki blocking her way, Anon's attitude at this point was still relatively mild. I'm the one asking you. Compared to Anon, Ms. Taki's attitude was a bit more hostile. Chapter 42. However, neither of the two girls had expected that while they were arguing, Tamari would take the opportunity to flee. Tamari. Taki saw this and wanted to follow, but she was instantly grabbed by Anon's no cool down, hard CC grip on her arm. Therefore, she could only watch as Tamari's back gradually disappeared into the distance. What do you think you're doing? Taki, whose attitude was already not great, now had a completely dark expression on her face. Isn't Tamari-chan my friend? Your friend? Taki shook off Anon's hand, and then, unsurprisingly, the two of them started to argue. Are you nuts? In the end, after learning that Anon wanted to form a band with Tamari, this was Taki's evaluation. Anon, huh? Finally, the camera focused on Tamari's lonely figure, and the first episode came to an end. Futsu, 2, Atrimi, Wananidaru. What is normal and taken for granted anyway? Baku no timi arumashizushida wa kranikara, because the ruler in my hand can't measure it at all. As the ending theme song began to play, a wistful and melancholic expression appeared on the faces of the girls. That's it. And besides them, many other people were feeling the same way at this moment. Is this a new band anime? Interesting. The band already disbanded in the first episode. How will the plot develop from here? I'm looking forward to it. After K-On, there's finally a watchable band anime. It ended so quickly. If I can't watch the next episode, I'm going to die. So this is what a band is like? Why does it seem a little scary? A certain pink-haired girl who longed to be in a band trembled after watching the first episode. Although there was no promotion or advertising before the broadcast, it was, after all, airing in the primetime slot on Fuji TV. This was one of the country's 5 major television networks, with a massive viewer base. In Kamijo Matsumi's previous life, MyGO did not have such favorable treatment. Furthermore, the environment of this world was completely different from his last one. Perhaps because there were many real-life bands, most of the band anime in this world were not very good. Compared to the 100 schools of thought contending and the battle of gods and demons of his previous world, the only notable band anime in this world was K-On! Therefore, under these favorable conditions of time, place, and people, the already high-quality MyGO generated immense popularity after just the first episode. Many people, after watching the first episode, couldn't help but recommend this special band anime to their friends. And the popularity of MyGO also brought the show to the attention of some of the girls' acquaintances, all of whom were greatly surprised. Why do the characters in this new anime look so familiar? Isn't that our classmate, friend? The girls themselves, of course, were temporarily unaware of all this. After they finished watching the episode, they all began to question the main culprit. Taki, what on earth is this anime? Why do you know so much about us? Anon, this is completely based on things that happened in our real lives, isn't it? You actually made it into an anime. Isn't this a violation of our likeness and privacy rights? Stray Cat, interesting anime. Looking at the messages from the girls on his phone, Kamijo Matsumi was clearly prepared. Big capitalist, I know you're all anxious, but don't be anxious just yet. Big capitalist, I'll answer one by one. Big capitalist, first, for Ano-chan. Please rest assured, this anime is a story about band girls. It won't involve any real private matters. Big capitalist, furthermore, all of this was actually written in the contract. Your likeness fees will be paid to you later. Contract? What contract? Hearing him say this, Anon finally remembered that she seemed to have signed a contract with him. As for the contents of the contract, one could only say that if she had even glanced at it, it wouldn't be a case of not having seen it at all. Anon, that stuff was in the contract? Big capitalist, you didn't read it carefully yourselves, so how is that my fault? Anon, we trusted you. Can you even live up to our trust? The slightly guilty Miss Anon chose to make a false counter-accusation. Big capitalist, that's enough. Kamijo Matsumi had not deceived them in the contract. In fact, the terms were far above the industry standard. Anon, you. Ano-chan's cheeks puffed out angrily. She looked just like an inflated pufferfish, extremely cute. Big capitalist, as for Taki-chan's question, I can only say that I know because I watched MyGO. Kamijo Matsumi never lies. Anon, huh? What are you talking about? Miss Anon clearly couldn't understand his answer, feeling that he was dodging the question and being nonsensical. Taki, let's put this man's business aside for now. Let's talk about you first, Chai Anon. Watching their exchange, Taki, who should have been on Anon's side, suddenly turned her guns on her. Anon, me? What is there to talk about with me? Miss Ano never expected to be backstabbed by a teammate, but more than that, she felt guilty. Taki, at this point, you're not still trying to fool us, are you? Anon, fool you about what? Miss Ano still wanted to make a last-ditch struggle. Taki, you never even thought about taking the band seriously, did you? Taki, and although I don't know what happened yesterday, you're not very skilled at playing the guitar either, are you? Taki, you invited Tamari only because her reputation would make you look good, right? Taki, you. What do you think a band is? It's a lifelong commitment, you hear me, sis. At this moment, Anon was like the demon King Mazan after taking a full set of sun breathing from Ecchi. Even if she knew the right answer, she was still at a loss for words. Anon, that's not it. After a long silence, this was the only reply Miss Ano could give. Taki, so you're saying the content of the anime is fake? That's not what you seemed to be saying earlier. Miss Anon was completely speechless. After all, although Taki's attitude was harsh, what she was saying was the truth. Taki, if you just wanted to play around, you could have just joined any random band, right? Big capitalist, Taki-chan, that's enough. Tamari, Reiki, don't say any more. Seeing that Taki was about to verbally expel Ano-chan from the band, Kamijo Matsumi and Tamari spoke up at almost the same time. Anon, Tamari, you don't have to speak up for me. She's right. However, Taki had just gone silent when Anon, whose mental state had been crushed by the pressure, finally snapped. Anon, it's just that everyone else was in a band, and I was afraid of not fitting in, so I wanted to be in one too. Anon, I'm not good at the guitar at all. Even now, I've barely learned the basics. Yesterday was because of special circumstances. Anon, I only invited Tamori out of vanity. Maybe I wasn't suited for this band from the beginning? The conflict that was supposed to erupt in the 5th episode was ignited ahead of schedule because of the anime. Anyway, Anon had now completely given up. Whatever happens, happens. Chapter 43, Tamari. That's not what Anon said. However, just as she was about to give up, someone else disagreed. Although Kamijo Matsumi had already plucked the peach of her previous efforts to win Tamori over, it didn't mean that all the goodwill she had built up with her had vanished into thin air. Besides, the two of them were classmates who sat next to each other. With this advantage of proximity, Taki next door was practically crying with envy. Tamari, vanity or anything else, I don't understand any of it. Tamari, I only know that back then, Anon was the first person who hoped I would continue to be in a band. Tamari, to me, Anon is indispensable. For Tamari, every member of the band now was indispensable. Tamari, so, I don't want Anon to leave. Tamori scores big points. Anon, Tamari. Reading Tamori's words asking her to stay, Anon was moved to a complete mess. After all, Tamari had always seemed to be speaking up for Kamijo Matsumi in front of her. She never expected to hold such a high place in her heart. Her previous efforts had not been in vain. Big capitalist, so, Ano-chan, you wouldn't want to make Tamori sad, would you? Seeing Tamari finish, Kamijo Matsumi also chimed in to comfort her. Anon, hey, friend from the island nation, please tone down the cringy act. Wait, what do you mean by that? Anon, of course I won't make her sad. After all, we are indispensable to each other. How can a guy like you even compare? Anon, right, Tamari-chan. Miss Ano, whose zodiac sign is clearly a pufferfish, was evidently getting cocky again. Tamari, Matsumi is also very important. However, she had barely finished her talk before she was slapped in the face by Tamari. Tamari, Anon, can you please not talk about Matsumi like that? Seeing Tamori's reply, Anon couldn't help but fall silent. She knew what place he held in Tamori's heart. How could she have been so foolish just now? What kind of love potion did this guy give her? Big capitalist, Tamari, you're protecting me so much. Won't Anon get angry? Anon, huh? Anon was about to let it go, but seeing his message, her anger flared up again. However, a certain someone seemed to feel it wasn't enough and continued his assault. Big capitalist, Ano-chan is so fierce. She's not going to hit me, is she? It's so scary. Big capitalist, unlike me, who only knows how to dote on Tamari-chan. Matsumi-chan, Matsumi. In what should have been Great God Saki's mansion, she looked at him with a complicated expression. The thought that this bizarre creature was her fiancé filled her with indescribable feelings. And besides Tamari and Rana, the other girls also felt a wave of green tea behavior wash over them, all of them showing the weary, disgusted expression of someone who has seen too much weirdness on the internet. Stray cat, interesting man. No matter what others thought, Rana was having a good time watching. Anon, are you fucking crazy? As the target of the assault, goosebumps rose all over Anon's body. She wished she could give him 2 bang-bang punches. Unfortunately, she did not have the ability to punch people through the internet cable. Taki, so, did no one realize someone was being ignored? She was the one who had questioned Anon for Tamori's sake. But in the end, it was Tamari who spoke up to defend Anon. Miss Taki instantly felt a wave of listlessness. It's normal for Tamori to be like this. They're just ordinary friends. It was me who overstepped. At this moment, somewhere in Gotham City, a certain Dark Knight raised his head, a serious expression on his face. He had sensed the aura of the Joker. Soyo, alright, everyone stop fighting. Seeing that Anon had failed to pick up the quitting the band script, Soyo, although a bit disappointed, did not enter a losing battle. Instead, she acted as the peacemaker like she used to. Soyo, for a band, harmony is the most important thing. Soyo, but we can't blame Ricky. She was just thinking about the band. But for guitar skills, can't we just practice more? Seeing Soyo's words, Tamari nodded repeatedly. Tamari, Soyo is right. Ricky was also thinking about the band. Tamari, but, Ricky, can you please not fight with Anon? I don't want everyone in the band to fight. Taki, since Tamari has spoken, then let's just drop it. Seeing the message from Tamari on her phone, Taki, who had been feeling a bit emo, instantly perked up. She cares about me. I'm in her heart. Seeing that the girls had finished talking, Kamijo Matsumi also spoke up at the right time. Big capitalist, I believe everyone has a lot of questions about this anime. But at the very least, it's an excellent work, isn't it? Big capitalist, please wait patiently until the anime is finished. I believe everyone will get the answers they want. Anon, why so serious all of a sudden? You're not Kamijo Matsumi. He would never say something like that. Who are you? Big capitalist, sorry, Matsumi-chan just snatched my phone. Matsumi-chan, I did not. Matsumi, you're bad. Wait, are you two doing a comedy routine here? No, wait a minute. Anon suddenly noticed the key point. How could Matsumi-chan snatch your phone this late at night? Are you two living together? Tamari, I trust Matsumi. Just as Anon was about to type, Tamari's declaration cut off her line of questioning. Taki, I'm with Tamari. Seeing Tamari speak up, Taki immediately followed suit. Soyo, I trust Kamijo-kun too. Even through the screen, one could almost hear her cutesy voice. Stray Cat, anime, interesting. Following Tamari's lead, the other band girls also spoke up one after another. Seeing that they didn't seem to be pursuing the matter of the anime, Kamijo Matsumi continued. Big capitalist, Fuji TV will continue to broadcast episodes 2 and 3 of the anime tomorrow. Does everyone want to come to my house to watch together? Watching MyGO. With only Matsumi Wakaba today, he had realized that he couldn't see the reactions of the other girls, and he instantly felt like he had missed out on a fortune. Anon, wait, there's more tomorrow? And 2 episodes? Normally, isn't it 1 episode a week? As a trendy girl, although Miss Ano didn't usually follow these things, she still had some basic common knowledge. Big capitalist, the suffering of being rich is beyond your imagination. Anon, I know who's the richest now, you don't have to keep repeating it. Annoyed, why do I keep asking for trouble? Big capitalist, so, are you coming? The final result was obvious. Tamari wouldn't refuse him. Taki wouldn't refuse Tamari. Soyo wanted to come over to catch Sakiko. Rana could be bribed with a parfait. And the final one, Anon, would certainly not fight a losing battle. Chapter 44, Anon, so what's the deal with that anime? Do you know magic? Just as Kamijo Matsumi and the girls had settled their plans for tomorrow and he was about to turn off his phone, he received a private message from Miss Ano. Big capitalist, no. He wasn't surprised by her question, but rather by the fact that she had waited until now to ask. Anon, eh? Don't lie to me. That sticker of yours was clearly not normal, right? And you're telling me you don't know magic? Having experienced the sticker's miraculous effects, Anon obviously wouldn't believe his answer. Big capitalist, magic is a miracle, but a miracle is not necessarily magic. Faced with this riddle-like response, Anon had to think for a good while before she understood its meaning. Anon, isn't that the same thing? The girl expressed her sentiment. Riddle man, get out of the Bang Dream universe. Anon, so you're saying you have an ability that isn't magic but has a similar effect. Anon, are you able to use this ability to monitor us at any time? Miss Ano asked the question she was most concerned about. Although she considered this scumbag a friend, she could not accept living under someone else's surveillance every moment of the day. Big capitalist, no. He couldn't just take the blame for something like that. Anon, then how do you know so much about what happened between me and Tamari? After receiving a negative reply, Miss Ano let out a small sigh of relief. Big capitalist, everything this land has experienced may just be a magnificent play on the other side of the stars. Big capitalist, and I just so happen to have watched this wonderful performance. Wait, did the Urnites just invade? Faced with Kamijo Matsumi, who seemed to have been possessed by a certain lynx, Anon was utterly speechless. What is he even talking about? Can you speak normally? Anon, if you don't want to answer, then fine. But that means fantastical things like magic and superpowers exist in this world, right? As Anon sent the message, little stars began to sparkle in her eyes. At this age, regardless of gender, who hadn't had fantasies about such things? Big capitalist, miracles and magic all come at a price. Then, to Miss Ano's surprise, his attitude towards her question suddenly became serious. Big capitalist, if you deliberately chase after them, it will only bring misfortune. Anon, why are you making it sound so scary? I get it, I won't ask anymore. The flame of curiosity that had just been ignited in Miss Ano's heart was instantly extinguished by a bucket of cold water. Big capitalist, in any case, if a strange white creature ever wants you to sign a contract to become a magical girl or something, no matter what it says, absolutely do not agree. Call me immediately. Anon, huh? Why? Big capitalist, people will die. His one sentence made Anon swallow all her remaining questions. Anon, that sounds a little scary. After that, the two of them fell into silence. After hesitating for a moment, Anon finally asked the question that had been bothering her from the beginning. Anon, are you and Matsumi-chan living together now? Seeing her message, he couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, seemingly not expecting her to ask such a question. Big capitalist, what do you think? Anon, don't answer a question with a question. Miss Ano seemed a little dissatisfied. Anon, forget it. By the way, about your superpower, does anyone else know? Big capitalist, for now, only you. After all, Only Miss Ano was so bad that she required him to use an item-assisted strategy. Anon, I see. Then good night. However, Miss Ano seemed to have misunderstood this in a different way. She replied cheerfully and then logged offline. Seeing this, Kamijo Matsumi also turned off his phone. He looked at the night scenery outside the window and yawned slightly. The diligent Miss Matsumi had already gone to do the dishes, and he, in turn, opened the system panel that had been almost completely non-existent until now. Although it had been mostly hidden, his system was quite capable compared to most of the other cat-type systems that could only whimper and act cute. In his system, there were currently two types of currency. One was money value, representing all the profits from the anime he produced. And it wasn't cash, but a conceptual profit. That is, when he spent money value in the system, the real money he earned from the anime would not be affected, and vice versa. At the same time, the system calculated the total profit of the anime, not just the portion he received. For example, the shares that would later be given to the band girls would also be counted towards the money value. The purpose of money value was to purchase anime scripts from the system. Furthermore, his system wasn't buggy like some others. Only anime produced from scripts purchased from within the system would generate profit. The system did not recognize anime he replicated from his memories of his past life. The second currency in the system was called bun value, which was formed from the mental energy generated by the audience watching the anime, similar to the concept of emotional value. Bun value could be used to redeem magical items and skills from the system, which was divided into a normal pool and a limited pool. The normal pool was the system's built-in exchange shop, which changed daily. Although extraordinary abilities and items would occasionally appear, it mainly consisted of ordinary items that existed in the real world. From gold and silver down to nuclear bombs, these items appeared with relatively high frequency. The limited pool, on the other hand, allowed him to redeem items and skills from the anime he was currently producing. For example, his only limited pool at the moment was full of exchangeable items like Soyo's chest puffing outness, Taki's Ek, and Wakaba Matsumi's art of conversation. The sticker he had used on and on earlier came from this limited pool. Furthermore, although he had only produced MyGO, the system had judged it as having unlocked the entire Bang Dream pool. Therefore, he could also redeem the abilities of the senior band members. Of course, for him, none of this was really of any use. Because name, Kamijo Matsumi innate skill, omnipotent melody, purple, that's right. Most of the Bang Dream girls probably didn't have skills with a level as high as his. To put it in perspective, even a genius like Rana only possessed a lower-tier blue skill. A purple skill was the pinnacle for a mortal. Its appearance almost always signified the peak of an era. It was similar to the holy bodies in some cultivation novels. Its appearance was enough to suppress an entire generation. Of course, with his current physical condition, even the strongest skill was useless. He had basically said goodbye to musical instruments. It wasn't that there were no helpful skills for him in the Bang Dream pool, but what he needed most right now were items and abilities that could repair his body. Chapter 45. However, besides some of the girls' more bizarre traits, the Bang Dream pool was basically filled with music-related skills, which clearly didn't have what Kamijo Matsumi needed. Therefore, if he wanted to redeem something from the system that could heal his body, he could only wait for a new pool to open later or try his luck with the daily normal pool. But he wasn't in a hurry. After all, if he couldn't play the violin, then he couldn't. How could that be as fun as making MyGO? Right now. Wasn't it nice to just be a passive observer and coast? With his family's wealth, it wasn't like he would starve to death. Of course, if possible, he still hoped to repair his body as soon as possible. After all, having a combat power lower than even one Soyo was truly embarrassing. But it was still early. MyGO had only just aired its first episode, and he hadn't accumulated much bun value yet. However, with 2 episodes airing back-to-back tomorrow, it should bring in a nice sum for him. Time quickly passed to the afternoon of the next day. Since he was the one who had invited them, he naturally wouldn't make the girls walk over themselves. However, just as he was sending cars to pick them up, he suddenly remembered that he seemed to have missed someone. Oh no, I forgot about Great God Saki. After all, she hadn't contacted him since she left the company that day, and she was completely absent from the group chat online yesterday. But how could he neglect her for such a fun event? Big capitalist, Great God Saki, are you there? He immediately sent a message to Sakiko online. Sakiko, what is it? Seeing the message from him, Miss Saki didn't seem surprised, just sighed helplessly. It seemed she had learned her lesson from last time and didn't try to fight him this time. Big capitalist, yesterday, we all had an awesome music party at Ring. All the band girls went. Guess who wasn't invited? Sakiko. His opening move nearly made Great God Saki lose her composure. Good grief. So you're resorting to ban bullying, are you? Big capitalist. We sang and chatted together, and we even saw Tamari's cute smile. Guess who didn't come? Sakiko, what on earth are you trying to say? She had to admit her blood pressure was soaring. This guy really had a knack for messing with people's minds. Big capitalist, to prevent great god Saki from secretly crying little pearls at home all by herself, I can reluctantly let you come over to date too. Who does this tsundere think he is? And a tsundere man is so disgusting. Also, I would never secretly cry little pearls at home. Sakiko, sorry, I won't be going. You should invite someone else. As someone who wanted to cut ties with her former friends, she naturally wouldn't participate in this kind of group activity. Big capitalist, don't be like that, Saki-chan. My house is pretty big. Come and hang out with us. Big capitalist, if you get tired, you can just sleep over. It's fine. He naturally wouldn't let great god Saki off so easily. After all, without her, the fun would be cut in half. Big capitalist, Saki-chan, if you're not a good girl, I'll have Soyo come and get you. Great god Saki, who had been about to refuse again, saw this, and her face instantly stiffened. It had to be said, he had really found her weak spot. The thought of him revealing her location to Soyo, and then having her camp outside her door every day, made Sakiko's scalp tingle. Sakiko, don't tell her. I'll go. Faced with his Soyo deterrence, great god Saki ultimately chose to surrender. However, if Miss Soyo knew about this, she'd probably cry herself to sleep in her own mansion. After settling things with great god Saki, Kamijo Matsumi began to wait for the other girls to arrive. They didn't make him wait long and arrived a short while later. Due to their lack of connection to the place, they naturally didn't know that this large villa once belonged to great god Saki. So you live in a place like this? Looking at his huge mansion, Anon couldn't help but click her tongue. Although she knew this rich dog was wealthy, she didn't expect him to be this wealthy. After all, this was Tokyo, where every inch of land was gold. The value of living in such a large villa was self-evident. Don't touch things randomly. You'll get my house dirty. Hearing her words, he instinctively replied with this line. However, this response made the girl's cheeks puff out. Do you think I'm a child? Please, have some. As the group arrived in the living room, Matsumi Wakaba also began to play the hostess, pouring black tea for the girls. You two really live together? Seeing Matsumi Wakaba act like the lady of the house, even though she had already guessed it yesterday, Anon still felt inexplicably uncomfortable. Soyo rubbed the rim of her cup with her finger, trying to act as if she didn't care. Neither Kamijo Matsumi nor Matsumi Wakaba has anything to do with me. That's how it should be. So, why does my heart feel so heavy? Is it because of Matsumi Wakaba? Or is it because of him? Or perhaps both? Are you two, by any chance, dating? Soyo, who had been struggling with her own complicated feelings, perked up her ears upon hearing Anon's question. Even Tamari's attention was drawn. No. An unknown number of girls secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Matsumi-chan is just my fiancé. So that's how it is. But isn't that even more intimate than a girlfriend? Miss Anon retorted, getting a little worked up. That's true, but a fiancé is not the same as a girlfriend. Are you trying to play word games with me? Besides, she's my fiancé. Why are you so worked up about it, Ano-chan? Eh? Hearing this, Anon instantly turned red. Could it be you? What is this guy trying to say? Don't tell me he misunderstood? Looking at his suddenly serious expression, Anon couldn't help but swallow. She was just genuinely surprised, that's all. She didn't have any other thoughts. Isn't having your eyes on Tamari enough? You have ideas about Matsumi-chan too? He seemed to see right through the girl before him and warned her. Give it up. I won't give Matsumi-chan to you. Huh? It took Anon a moment to process this, but soon, the blush on her face grew even deeper, this time from anger, and she shouted furiously, who has ideas about them? Ms. Anon, who had been feeling a bit shy, was now on the verge of fainting from anger. When will I ever be free of this banned lesbian stereotype? Wait, isn't he the one who started this rumor in the first place? And so, the girl's gaze became dangerous. Chapter 46. In the end, it was great god Saki who saved Kamijo Matsumi's life. Just as the smile on Miss Anon's face was becoming increasingly amiable, the car sent to pick Sakiko up arrived at the perfect moment. As the host, Kamijo Matsumi naturally had to go down to greet her, thus escaping his predicament. On the other side, after arriving at her destination, Miss Sakiko's feelings also became incredibly complex. After all, the Toyokawa family was no less prominent than the Kamijo family. She had once been a high-class young lady herself and naturally wouldn't be surprised by a single detached villa in Tokyo. The problem was, This was her fucking house. When did it fall into his hands? What do you think? Looking at Great God Saki beside him, Kamijo Matsumi said with a smile. Isn't my house big? This is my house. Even though she had already fallen from heaven to hell, seeing her former residence truly change hands, it was impossible for her heart not to be moved. But soon, the girl's gaze dimmed. No, it's not anymore. She was no longer the great young lady of the Toyokawa family. At the same time, the resentment in the girl's heart towards him grew even stronger. Did this guy not only steal my Tamori, but he wants to take my house as well? No, it was I myself who gave all of this up with my own hands. But my house looks a bit like Sakiko's old house, eh? However, Sakiko didn't get to be emo for long before her blood pressure soared again. Want to come over and stay for a bit? No, thank you. The girl gritted her teeth and smiled as she rejected his invitation. But when she walked into the familiar villa with him, her heart was still filled with a mix of emotions. She had never thought that she would one day step into this place as a guest. This place no longer belonged to her, just like Tamari, just like Krychek, just like everything she had ever owned. With the arrival of Great God Saki, the atmosphere in the living room instantly became somewhat heavy. It wasn't that everyone was deliberately excluding her, but even Matsumi Wakaba had at least been to a music party with them. Sakiko, on the other hand, was not only unrelated to the new band but was also the main culprit behind the old band's disbandment. It was natural for them to feel a sense of distance. And Sakiko, as if completely unaware of the atmosphere, smiled and greeted everyone with the etiquette of a high-class lady, while secretly clenching her fists. I can't go back. This was my own choice. Soyo saw this scene, and a glint appeared in her eyes. It's my time to shine. Saki-chan, what took you so long? However, she had barely prepared her cutesy voice when a certain pink-haired girl stood up and took Great God Saki's hand. Everyone's been waiting for you. Come, sit here. Thank you. Sakiko was clearly full of goodwill towards Saint Anon for coming to her rescue. Soyo, having been beaten to the punch, had the light go out in her eyes. At this moment, she felt like a certain king of pots who had lost the village chief election due to hesitation, her heart filled with regret. At the same time, she grew wary of the pink-haired girl. Kamijo Matsumi's evaluation of her was correct after all. This woman was indeed a dangerous element. And faced with Soyo's death glare, the curve of Anon's lips stiffened slightly. Soyo's stare is so scary. Thanks to Anon's intervention, the atmosphere eased up again. Afterward, it was Sakiko's attitude that was somewhat cold. She was afraid that if she reconciled with Tamori and the others, her former weak self would be revived. Besides, she was the one who had cut ties unilaterally. She had no right to go back. Rana, on the other hand, was eating her specially provided matcha parfait, her lips pursed into a cute, cat-like arc. The cat was having a good time watching. The cat found this group of women very interesting. And so, in this strange atmosphere, the second episode of MyGO officially began to air. The girls temporarily cleared their minds of miscellaneous thoughts and focused their attention on the TV screen in front of them. And besides them, many other people were also sitting in front of their TVs, waiting for the broadcast. Even though only one episode had aired, this special band anime had already gained a lot of fans. The anime opened with the final scene of the first episode. Anon and Taki argued, ending with a sharp critique, "Are you nuts?" After that, according to Anon's memory, a certain scumbag should appear and launch a point-blank assault on her. Such a terrible memory. The expression on Miss Ano's face couldn't help but change. However, to her surprise, the person who approached her next was not Kamijo Matsumi, but... Are you okay? Did something happen? The on-screen Anon turned her head and saw a brown-haired young lady in a Tsukinamori school uniform. The flow of fate had changed. Wait, shouldn't that be Kamijo Matsumi? Why is it Soyo? The real Anon's eyes widened. It's nothing. The on-screen Anon's thoughts were in a jumble because of what had just happened, so after replying to Soyo, she immediately ran away. After that, the anime showed a shot of Tamari, and then the opening theme began to play. Mashi kono aim gagitmo, even if this rain stops, wajirzu ni arutkuyo, I'll walk on without forgetting, seisho no hitoshizaku ni kao agatakyo no baku o, me, today, who lifted my face to that first drop of rain, unlike the steady rhythm and faint melancholy of the ending theme and Haruakaj. The tone of MyGo's opening was uplifting from the very beginning, like the sun breaking through after the rain, dispelling the dark clouds and illuminating the earth. The visuals were also different from the ending theme's credits. The ops visuals featured the girls of the MyGo band performing passionately on a sports field after the rain. They were each wearing their future MyGo band uniforms, their faces beaming with happy smiles. It was as if all obstacles had been overcome, all sorrow had gone far away. Some analyses from experts in Kamijo Matsumi's previous life seem to say that the op was a song Tamori wrote for all the members of MyGO. After the band was truly established and she had undergone her own transformation. I wonder if the her of this moment can understand that feeling? To this, Tamari herself probably didn't know the answer. She only knew that she loved this song. And Tamari watched the on-screen version of herself, surrounded by the other girls, singing freely under the sky, a trace of longing flashing in her eyes. The her in the op looked so dazzling. Has the her up there truly become human? Anon, for her part, temporarily tossed her earlier confusion to the back of her mind. Watching the op on the screen, the smile on her face was harder to suppress than the recoil of an AK-47, so this is the complete form of her future band? Even as a guitarist, I still look pretty dazzling. At the same time, she also felt that the band uniforms in the op were really beautiful and had a special feeling. She made up her mind. This would be their band uniform. Chapter 47. Among the girls, the only one with a dark expression was probably Ms. Soyo. Clearly, she was very dissatisfied with her on-screen self in the opening theme. You're playing with them. And you're wearing a matching uniform? And you're smiling so happily. Pa, disgusting. How could she possibly show a genuine smile in a band without Sakiko? How could she acknowledge a band without Sakiko? She admitted that this anime Kamijo Matsumi had made was a bit strange, but everything in the opening was just his fantasy. It would absolutely never happen. Sakiko is indispensable. Anon and the cat are disposable. Thinking this, Soyo looked at Anon, who was struggling to suppress her smile, and the shadow in her eyes deepened. You can smile for now. Sooner or later, I'll cut you out. Lifting her head to look at the screen, the girl's determination grew even firmer. If that day ever comes, then she will be the one to end this band with her own hands. Bakawatsu Yametai yo a hito shizuku o, I want to gather them, those single drops of rain. As the opening theme ended, the first scene of the episode unfolded before the girls. With Tsukina Mori Girls Academy appearing on the screen, everyone could basically guess whose turn it was next. Afterward, amidst the Gokigunyo greetings from the other young ladies, Matsumi Wakaba made her expected entrance. I didn't see Ricky yesterday. Still no preamble, straight to the point. Did Saki-chan reply to you? Matsumi Wakaba shook her head. I see. Soyo's eyes were deep, making it impossible to see her true thoughts. Gokigunyo. Gokigunyo. Soyo put on her gentle mask to greet her classmates, but when she faced Matsumi Wakaba, she revealed her true face. Why don't we go check on Saki-chan at her house? Soyo's tone was as calm and gentle as ever, as if she were discussing what to have for lunch, but it made Matsumi Wakaba stop in her tracks. You know where she lives, right? Seeing this, Soyo directly blocked her path, a perfectly nice smile on her face. It would be great if you could tell me. Clearly, Matsumi's long-term evasiveness had exhausted her patience. Miss Soyo decided to take the initiative. Holy shit, doxing. Matsumi Wakaba naturally knew the consequences of telling Soyo Sakiko's address and could only lower her head in silence. Soyo didn't speak either, but the intensity of the perfectly nice smile on her face grew stronger. I'll try to contact her again. Faced with Soyo's stare, Matsumi Wakaba ultimately couldn't remain indifferent. She lowered her head in silence for a good while before finally giving this reply. Cleaning on like this. Isn't it just pathetic, Soyo? However, while Matsumi Wakaba might indulge Soyo, Sakiko, who had just watched herself nearly get doxxed at the beginning of the show, could not tolerate it. Why would you say that? Soyo, however, felt she had done nothing wrong. I just wanted to show my concern for Saki-chan. I don't need your concern. Sakiko truly didn't understand why this person had such a deep obsession with her. She just wanted to make a clean break with her naive past. Why did she have to keep pestering her? But can you two stop fighting? Are we watching this or not? In the end, it was Miss Taki who spoke up, interrupting their conversation. Sakiko didn't continue to question Soyo, but a hint of frustration appeared between her brows. Soyo, on the other hand, wore a smile, the obsession in her eyes growing deeper. She will definitely make Saki-chan have a change of heart. They will definitely return to being the happy group they once were. At this point, the anime cut to a scene with Tamari and Anon. Why do you look so down? Anon, who had been smiling and greeting her classmates, gave this assessment, her own cheeks twitching as she looked at Tamori's lowered head. Good morning. It's a penguin again. The high-ek Miss Anon directly used Tamori's favorite penguin band-aids to open a conversation. A chin-strap penguin. So cute. And then, unsurprisingly, a smile that would make a certain Miss Taki's heart ache appeared on Tamari's face. This is for you. Then, after a bit of back and forth, Anon accepted Tamari's penguin band-aid. Taki, watching this from the side, was about to turn into a lemon spirit from sourness. Tamari had never given her any gifts, yet this person was acting reluctant. Ricky, do you want one too? The single-threaded Tamari rarely noticed the envy in Ms. Taki's eyes and tilted her head as she asked. Tamari, Yes, I want one so badly. But even the straightforward Ms. Taki couldn't bring herself to directly ask for a gift. This one is an Adelie penguin. Seeing this, Tamari directly took out a rare penguin band-aid that she had planned to put in her collection later and handed it to Taki. Is this for me? This one is for Ricky. Tamari, I will treasure this gift from you like the most precious treasure. No, it's just a band-aid. There's no need to be so dramatic, right? Listening to Taki's excited words, Anon, standing to the side, couldn't help but twitch her lips, an indescribable expression on her face. That's enough. Don't tell me everyone in this band is an emotionally heavy woman. Doesn't that make a normal person like me seem out of place? After Tamori's turn was over, Anon, at the suggestion of a classmate, went to ring, wanting to find band members through the bulletin board. But obviously, a core position like lead guitarist and vocalist was usually decided from the start and not openly recruited. Well, if Anon had gone looking at another small live house called Starry, perhaps the result would have been different. Just as Anon was about to go home in disappointment, Miss Soyo made her grand entrance. You were a big help yesterday. Although it was just a simple expression of concern, Anon still smiled and bowed in thanks. Or perhaps, she simply wanted to hit on this pretty girl she found to her liking? Who the fuck are you? Although she didn't recognize the pink-haired girl who had suddenly appeared, Soyo still managed an awkward yet polite smile. It's all thanks to you talking to me back then? Oh. At this moment, Soyo finally remembered who this pink-haired girl was. She suddenly blocked my way. Anon began to complain. And she was shouting and yelling. I didn't even know what to do. Chapter 48 What? However, the on-screen Anon's complaints were met with a counterattack from the real-life Miss Taki. You have a problem with me? No. This girl is so fierce. The smile on Anon's face was a bit stiff. This is all just the plot of the anime. It has nothing to do with me, right? What does the Anon in the anime have to do with the real her? Is that so? In the anime, faced with Anon's complaints, the smile on Soyo's face remained unchanged. But Ricky probably didn't mean to be mean to you. Oh no, so the two of them know each other. This time, it was the on-screen Anon's turn to be embarrassed. Should I not have said that about your friend? It's okay. She was so harsh to you all of a sudden, so it's not entirely your fault. And then followed a friendly exchange between the two girls. Finally, at Soyo's suggestion, they sat down inside to chat, and on her recommendation, Anon even ordered the same hot Earl Grey tea as her. Come to think of it, that's what I ordered when I first met Kamijo Masumi, too. Soyo didn't know why she recalled this memory, but then she noticed a blind spot she hadn't paid attention to at the time. Wait, how did he know she liked hot Earl Grey tea? But soon, Soyo stopped dwelling on it. For someone who could produce an anime like this, such a small detail was not worth worrying about. Soon, the two of them were talking about bands. Just then, a certain white Persian cat happened to walk in, pushing a guitar case. As she plugged her guitar into the amp, the sudden burst of noise made Anon cover her ears. And after tuning, this cat began to play without a care in the world. So noisy. However, due to certain thoughts in her heart, even after the cat's noise, Anon persisted in speaking to Soyo. So I was saying, I'm looking for a band where I can be the lead vocalist and guitarist. You mean a singing guitarist? That's right. And then, right in front of the pink-haired girl, the cat performed a spectacular, professional-level guitar solo. Anon stared blankly at the cat, falling into a stunned silence. She's so good. Soyo exclaimed from across the table. If it doesn't work out, it's fine if someone else is the guitarist. Anon said, having witnessed the cat's skill, feeling a little less confident. But I still want to be the lead singer. Hey. Seeing Anon trying to snatch Tamori's position, Taki couldn't hold it in. She didn't say anything, but that single sound was more powerful than 1,000 words. Anon's cheeks burned red. Looking back now, she also found it incredible. Where did she, someone who could barely play the guitar, get the courage to want to be the lead guitarist and vocalist? But on second thought, it was actually normal. Back then, she had simply wanted to be in a center position. She had even rejected the traffic light trio for that reason. She hadn't thought about it that much. So, am I in the center position now? Oh, I'm playing guitar and standing in the corner. And I have to worry about getting pressured by Taki. So I rejected them back then for nothing. Isn't it all the same in the end? However, if she had to do it all over again, Anon would probably make the same choice. Although there wasn't a single normal person in this band, she found that she didn't dislike it for some strange reason. Why were you two arguing? In the anime, after Anon had endured Miss Taki's death glare, Soyo asked about the reason for their conflict. I don't know either. Anon replied, adding sugar cubes to her tea. I was just chatting with my friend when she suddenly appeared and demanded to know what I was doing. She even questioned my relationship with my friend. And she asked me, you're inviting Tamari to form a band? Keyword discovered. Soyo, who had been smiling and sipping her tea, paused slightly. And then she suddenly got angry. It was really weird. Soyo put down her cup, her gaze on the pink-haired girl turning serious for the first time. The Tamari you mentioned, are you referring to Takamatsu Tamari? Yes, my classmate. Anon seemed a bit surprised by Soyo's question. Do you know her? She's my friend too. Soyo clasped her hands, propped her chin on them in a classic pose reminiscent of Commander Ikari, her voice so gentle it could make one's body go limp. Soyo's plan brings a world-shaking change, and the ghost of Krychik sees the light again. I see. The anime gave a close-up of Soyo glancing at the school uniform Anon was wearing. So she's at Hanyoka now. And so, Soyo, who had just been casually dealing with Anon, suddenly became proactive, subtly guiding the pink-haired girl before her. Theoretically, the two of them should have been on the same level, but since Anon was completely unaware that she had walked into a trap and had no guard up, she was completely led by the nose. Do you want to form a band together? And so, Anon issued the invitation. Okay. Soyo agreed without any hesitation, as if she were answering a question about what to have for dinner. Really? Seeing this, Anon was in disbelief. After all, her previous invitations had been met with nothing but rejection. And Soyo had agreed so easily? But I'm really not that good, you know. That's good enough. And so, in her excitement, Miss Anon contributed one of the most famous scenes of the show. Soyo-san, I love you. Watching the on-screen Anon with hearts in her eyes for Soyo, the other girls all had strange expressions. And you say you're not a lesbian? Taki discreetly shielded Tamori behind her. It's over. I can never wash myself clean of this. At the same time, the screen changed, and the scene shifted to nighttime. Anon was sitting on the sofa at home, happily sending a message to Miss Soyo, the bassist she had just recruited today. And as the camera focused on Soyo, the screen instantly became dark and gloomy. She was sitting on her bed in her bedroom, not even having turned on the lights. Soyo looked at the message from Anon in her notification bar, with no interest in even opening it. She swiped away the notification, and the Krychik homepage appeared. Soyo stared at the homepage, her gaze fixed for a long time. The powerful gravity she emitted during this time was almost on par with Tamari's. Soyo-chan, you. The on-screen Anon, being in the thick of it, was understandably unaware of Soyo's true motives. But from a god's eye view, Soyo's flaws were all too apparent. The real Anon watched Soyo, her expression becoming complicated. And although Ms. Soyo was also an emotionally heavy contender, after Tamari, Anon's highest affection was for her. After all, who wouldn't like such a gentle and considerate young lady from Tsukinamori? But now she discovers that Soyo seems to have had ill intentions towards her. Chapter 49 Soyo. Compared to Anon's shock, Taki, who had been in Krychik with Soyo, seemed to see right through her. Don't tell me. You're still thinking about Krychik even now? After roasting Anon in the first episode, the second episode of the anime was now starting to roast Soyo. However, it seemed Soyo was much calmer than Anon. Is that not allowed? Surprisingly, Soyo didn't deny it. Instead, she wore a smile that suggested it was the most natural thing in the world. You haven't forgotten either, have you, Ricky? This band holds so many of our happy memories. Although she had no intention of trying to revive the band, as a relic of the former group, Taki clearly couldn't refute Soyo's words. Watching Taki's reaction, a certain emotion in Soyo's eyes grew stronger. She almost couldn't resist reviving the band right then and there, but in the end, she restrained the impulse. After all, she hadn't convinced Sakiko yet. If her attempt to revive the old band failed, but the new band exploded under her manipulation, that would be a real joke. For now, at least, she still had to consider Anon's and Rana's feelings. But, being able to form a new band with you all and have a new start, I'm very happy about that too. Soyo used the same lines Anon had used on her before. After all, that's just an anime, right? We can't take it seriously, can we? Finally, she took Anon's hand, the expression on her face as gentle as water. At the very least, I'm very grateful to Kamijo-kun. To be able to join Anon's band, I'm truly happy. Who could possibly resist this? At the very least, a certain pink-haired girl was completely mesmerized by the beauty of the gentle older sister. The on-screen Anon, just like the real one, was completely unaware of Ms. Soyo's malicious intent and was even over there bragging to her friends about getting a high-class lady from Tsukinamori as a teammate. After Anon's part was temporarily over, the camera focused on Mutsumi Wakaba. Clearly, she hadn't been fooling Soyo that morning, she really was planning to do something. However, the poor girl hadn't even had a chance to speak before she was deliberately ignored by the angry great god Saki for being too conspicuous while waiting outside Hanyoka's school gates. But Mutsumi was her childhood friend, after all, so in the end, Sakiko still went with her to a coffee shop called Hazawa. "Why did you come looking for me?" Soyo was over there urging her to contact Sakiko, but when she got to great god Saki, the first thing out of her mouth was a question. Pleasing neither side, getting hurt from both. Mutsumi's heart was bitter, but she didn't say it. "Because you didn't reply to my message." The girl replied with complete honesty. "I told you before, didn't I? Don't just tell my business to other people." Afterward, Sakiko, as expected, lost her temper over what had just happened. But since the person sitting in front of her was Mutsumi, her tone was still relatively mild. After complaining, as if to adjust her mood, Sakiko took a sip of the coffee in her hand with a stern face. "So good." The expression on great god Saki's face visibly brightened. At this moment, probably only Mutsumi Wakaba and Kamijo Mutsumi could understand the sadness behind that simple word. Soyo is very worried. Seeing Sakiko's mood improve, Mutsumi Wakaba also brought up the matter Soyo had entrusted to her. "She said she wants to go to your house." As her words fell, Sakiko's mood visibly plummeted. A good cup of coffee had just been wasted. "Can you tell her I moved?" Great god Saki asked, her face showing visible disgust. Mutsumi Wakaba could do nothing about this and could only silently drink her orange juice. The real Soyo, seeing this, found the situation hard to stomach. "What on earth did I do wrong? For you to hate me so much?" However, Soyo looked at Mutsumi Wakaba, her feelings slightly complicated. Her biggest grudge against her was regarding Sakiko. But now she discovered that it wasn't that Mutsumi didn't want to help, she really couldn't help. Remembering the harsh words she had said to her before, Soyo felt a sense of regret. But what good was regret now? She remembered the Mutsumi from yesterday, who had held Kamijo Mutsumi's hand in what felt like a show of defiance against her. The relationship between them could never go back. Soyo felt an inexplicable sadness in her heart. Did she, without realizing it, just lose something important again? "Sakiko, Soyo, aren't you two being a bit too harsh?" Even Soyo, who had her own issues, could see that Mutsumi was hurting. Anon, naturally, wouldn't fail to notice either. "Mutsumi-chan. She's supposed to be your friend, right?" Anon spoke up for the poor cucumber hero. "Sakiko's temper with Mutsumi-chan is way too much. And Soyo too." Although Anon had just been mesmerized by Soyo's beauty, she wasn't so shallow as to let her morals be dictated by good looks. At the very least, she found Soyo's behavior of only wanting to psychologically manipulate Mutsumi into contacting Sakiko truly hard to comment on. "It's my fault." Unexpectedly, or perhaps expectedly, in the face of Anon's accusation, Sakiko actually apologized quite readily. "I was in a bad mood. I shouldn't have taken it out on Mutsumi." Sakiko was just very sensitive. At her core, she was still gentle. Although she was like a powder keg ready to explode when she was in the thick of it, she could regain her composure when she stepped outside the situation. "I'm sorry, Mutsumi. I don't mind." Seeing great god Saki actually apologize to her, Mutsumi Wakaba was pleasantly surprised. After all, she was almost used to Black Sakiko getting angry at her for no reason. And Soyo, watching this scene, sat silently to the side like a Yuri outsider, the smile rarely seen absent from her face. Did she not feel a sense of self-reproach in her heart? But feeling that she had already had a falling out with her, she couldn't bring herself to speak up like Sakiko. This didn't mean she didn't care about Mutsumi Wakaba. On the contrary, it was because she cared that she was like this. People only become clumsy when facing those they care about. As the girls talked, the anime had already progressed to a scene with Anon, Soyo, and Taki. "Tomori-chan won't come." In response to Soyo's claim that Tomori would also join, Taki gave her own opinion. "Why not? Tomori-chan is very hurt right now." Soyo rarely lowered her head. The camera gave a close-up of her fiddling with her fingers. "All of us are very hurt. So, why is that?" Great god Saki. Clearly, it was now time for Sakiko's roasting session. Afterward, as Soyo took out her phone, she showed them a video they had filmed back when Krychik was still together. Chapter 50. Is everyone ready? This was her voice from when she was still white Sakiko. Gentle with a hint of cheerfulness. "Mutsumi-chan, you won't be in the shot if you stand over there." This was Soyo's voice, with more sincerity and less affectation than her current one. You need to come over here a little. White Sakiko pulled Matsumi Wakaba from the edge into the frame. It looks better if you stand in the center. Soyo. Watching this memory from the past in the anime, the expressions on the girls' faces were all wistful, except for Sakiko, who bit her lip. Damn it, the past is still chasing me. The happier her past life was, the more pathetic her current situation seemed. And the more deeply she had hurt them. But Sakiko did not think her actions were wrong. She and they were no longer people of the same world. Making a clean break as soon as possible was the best choice. The sadness that resulted was merely a necessary growing pain. She could endure the hardships of life. Could something like this really hurt her? It's just a little bit of hardship. Great God Saki did not realize that this was only just the beginning. The anime did not show the entire video. After Tamari said the song title Harukage, it cut directly to a shot of her in the planetarium. The starry sky and the ethereal music calmed the hearts of the girls, including Great God Saki. Perhaps this was one of the reasons Tamori loved the starry sky? Then, Anon, through Soyo, managed to ask Tamori out, and with that, the second episode came to an end. The girls all felt a little wistful and melancholic. After all, the second episode hadn't contained much content, and watching it only left them with more questions. But they didn't need to be disappointed, because after the ending theme, without even a commercial break, the third episode was served up for their viewing pleasure. If, before feeling sadness, one could collect the tears. Wouldn't that be nice? However, to the girls' surprise, the third episode did not pick up where the second left off, but was instead a flashback of Tamari's. I've always felt that I don't fit in with this world. With a fade from black, a younger version of Tamari appeared on the screen. The current Tamari was already very cute, but young Tamari was doubly so. At the very least, Taki was instantly sunk, an unnatural blush appearing on her face. Isn't she just too cute? However, young Tamari's experiences could hardly be described as cute. Showing her unique traits from a young age, she didn't fit in with her peers. While others played outside, she was inside, fiddling with rocks. When a red-haired Lilai named MyGO finally spoke to her, Tamari presented her with a woodlouse. In the end, even the gentle Mrs. Takamatsu could only try to persuade her with a sense of helplessness. Ever since she could remember, Tamari felt that she was different from others. Different from humans. Even when I'm with everyone, I'm still alone. I want to become human. Words she couldn't speak, Tamari could only turn them into text, printed on paper. Perhaps she would spend her entire life in this unchanging state, carrying this confusion and longing. However, fate took a turn in the season when the shadow of the spring sun covered her heart. Don't. Watching the cherry blossoms scatter by the bridge, Tamari instinctively reached out to touch them. But her action seemed to have been misunderstood by a certain girl, who directly tackled her to the ground. Are you okay? When Tamari came to her senses, she saw a blue-haired girl in a Tsukinamori school uniform, her face full of worry. I'm sorry, I pushed you down. But, you can't try to kill yourself. You were about to commit suicide just now, right? Tamari, being accused of attempting suicide, looked very innocent. Looking at it this way, maybe Great God Saki has a talent for being in the FBI? No, the flowers. Tamari opened her mouth to say that she had no intention of killing herself. Which is more important, flowers or life? At this point, White Sakiko had also realized her mistake, but she still said this. No, wait, flowers have lives too. It had to be said, the White Sakiko who got caught up on such small details was extremely cute, a complete opposite of her current self. On this film set where Saint Anon was already killing it, only the former White Sakiko could compare. If they've already fallen, they should be dead. Dead? It was my mistake. Realizing her misunderstanding, White Sakiko stood up and was about to turn and leave, but she was stopped by Tamari, who had noticed the scrape on her knee, and was brought back to her home. This was the first meeting of Takamatsu Tamori and Toyokawa Sakiko, an encounter straight out of a manga. At the very least, a certain Miss Nagasaki Soyo, who shall not be named, was green with envy. She looked at the White Sakiko in the anime, her eyes glazed over. Gentle, beautiful, and generous. This was the Sakiko she had been chasing, not the Sakiko of today who was. Soyo was suddenly jolted awake, feeling ashamed of her momentary thought. How could I have such a thought? No matter what Sakiko becomes, she is still Sakiko. She is still my unattainable dream. Miss Soyo did not realize that the moonlight of the past was no longer white. What a charming girl. Even Saint Anon was won over by White Sakiko. So gentle and mature, she's even more like a high-class lady than Soyo-chan. Oh no, Soyo has become a stepping stone. But Soyo didn't care. As long as you praise Great God Saki, you are her dear sister from another mother. So she However, after marveling at White Sakiko's charm, the expression on Anon's face became a bit strange. Is that really Sakiko-chan? Although her first impression wasn't bad, in their later interactions, even if it wasn't directed at her, Sakiko had left her with a somewhat aloof and unapproachable image. Could she and the dreamlike girl in the anime really be the same person? Anon, is that you? Sakiko, it's me. Back then, I was still rich. Anon, that's not fucking you. Great God Saki, oh no, I've become the stand-in. She is the naive and weak me who has already died. Anon's doubtful gaze undoubtedly pierced Great God Saki's heart. Perhaps others would marvel at White Sakiko's charm, but she only found it an eyesore. This was why she disliked Soyo. Because in her, she saw her former self. Both so naive, weak, and laughable. What charm could such a weak person possibly have? Sakiko did not want to acknowledge White Sakiko. Because the more dazzling her former self was, the more pathetic her present self became. The more she wanted to affirm the present, the more she had to deny the past. Sakiko was also lost. It was just unknown, if that naive White Sakiko were to appear before her now, would she have the courage to face her? Chapter 51. At the same time, in a room at a certain talent agency, a girl with black hair and brown eyes, wearing a sumami band dress, was sitting and intently watching a video on her phone. Looking at the blue-haired girl on the screen, who was like a white moonlight, she couldn't help but sigh. She was originally such a nice girl. How did she end up like this? Mana-chan? Just then, the door to the room opened from the outside, and a blonde-haired girl with a guitar slung over her shoulder and what could only be described as a magnificent face walked in. What are you watching? This was the first time she had seen her friend so focused on her phone. Ika, come over and watch this. Seeing her friend, the girl immediately waved excitedly. I found a super interesting anime. It's so much fun. She wanted to invite her friend to appreciate this masterpiece with her. If you don't watch it, you'll definitely regret it. I have a feeling this is going to be the best band anime since K-On! And, it even showed a clip of us. I never thought Sumami was already this popular. An anime? The blonde-haired girl tilted her head, a little confused and curious. She had been practicing her singing for the past 2 days, and during her breaks, she had been rereading old messages from Sakiko to recharge her emotional energy. She hadn't been paying attention to any anime. In fact, she wasn't very interested in them. But since it was a recommendation from her friend, she naturally couldn't be a killjoy. To be liked so much by Mana-chan, she said, putting her guitar aside and glancing casually at the screen in her friend's hand. I am sure it must. As the image of the white moonlight entered her eyes, the girl's words came to a screeching halt, followed by a violent pupil quake. Saki-chan. She instinctively whispered the girl's name. Miss Mana, who was busy recommending the new show to her friend, looked a bit surprised. So you've seen it before, Ika? What on earth is this anime? However, to Mana's surprise, after Ika snapped back to reality, she grabbed her shoulders, her expression more serious than Mana had ever seen. Can you tell me everything about it, in detail? Leaving Ika's side for now, the on-screen White Sakiko had already started looking through Tamari's notebook. Although I have friends just like everyone else. Even when I'm with everyone, I feel like I'm alone. That's. Watching White Sakiko nonchalantly read those embarrassing lines aloud, Tamari began to stutter. Are these lyrics? This was no exaggeration. At this moment, White Sakiko's eyes were truly shining. A light so bright it was enough to scald the present-day Sakiko. Then, the roles of the two girls were reversed, and it was Tamari's turn to be brought home by White Sakiko. However, compared to Tamari's ordinary residence, the place White Sakiko lived was much more luxurious. A detached villa that could almost be called a manor, and in Tokyo, no less. The moment this huge mansion appeared, White Sakiko was immediately imbued with the aura of a super-rich lamppost ornament. However, looking at this luxurious villa, the girls felt that something was not quite right. So Sakiko's family is this rich too? Anon's casual remark was like a sword piercing Great God Saki's heart. But, how come I feel like? Miss Ano thought for a moment, her expression becoming hesitant. Sakiko-chan's villa looks so much like the one we're in right now. As if her previous attack wasn't enough, Anon continued to twist the knife. It doesn't just look like it. This is her house. Although she had moved out, the villa had remained with the Toyokawa family, so at least she still had it as a memory. But now, it had been taken away by Kamijo Masumi. This guy. He took her Tamari, he took her former band members, and now he's even taking her house. Although Great God Saki kept a straight face, she looked as if she was about to burst into tears. It's not just similar. In the end, it was Soyo who delivered the final blow to Great God Saki. This is the same villa. Being highly sensitive to all things Sakiko, she had easily discerned the truth. Then, a question arose in her mind. Sakiko's house. Why is it in his hands now? Sakiko, is that MyGO guy living at your house? And the straightforward Taki asked the question directly. How was she supposed to answer that? Although this villa used to be Saki-chan's, it is indeed mine now. In the end, it was MyGO Matsume who spoke up and answered for her. For some reason, Sakiko suddenly stopped living here. I thought it was nice, so I bought it. Hey, Saki-chan. He said, turning his head and asking her as if it were a matter of fact. Why did you stop living in the big mansion? Was it because you didn't like it? What do you think? Faced with his expression that feigned complete ignorance, Sakiko felt her blood pressure genuinely skyrocket. My fists are clenched. They're rock hard. Being mocked so directly to her face, she really wanted to hit him. Think whatever you want. Sakiko said through gritted teeth, suppressing the urge to lash out. This villa has nothing to do with me anymore. This is not my home anymore. That cramped and damp rental room is. Thinking this, Sakiko's heart grew even heavier. No, this is nothing. I'm not the person I used to be. Wait, did I just say the wrong thing? Anon thought to herself, feeling a little awkward as she sensed the strange atmosphere between the two. I forgot to introduce myself. At this moment, the on-screen white Sakiko had finished singing her adult song. My name is Toyoakawa Sakiko. She stood up, her posture that of a perfect high-class young lady. She looked elegant and radiant, and compared to the pathetic Sakiko of the present, it was as if they were two different people. What's your name? Tamari. Tamari-san. The girl said, her voice filled with a hint of excitement as she extended an invitation. Would you be willing to form a band with me? And so, the gears of fate began to turn. Then, the pace of the anime quickened. Soyo, Taki, Matsumi Wakaba, and Tamori, the 5 members of Krychik, were brought together under the arrangement of White Sakiko. Excuse me. With everyone gathered, Ms. White Sakiko began her speech. Everyone, thank you for accepting my invitation today. I have been greatly looking forward to meeting you all. It had to be said, as expected of a high-class lady, her polite speech was flawless. From today on, we are a band. A community of fate, playing music together. Chapter 52. It had to be said, the on-screen White Sakiko was truly dazzling. But the more dazzling she was, the more painful it was for the real Sakiko. Fate. In the anime, Soyo rested her chin on her hands, seemingly very fond of the words White Sakiko had used. Yes, a community of fate. What a wonderful phrase. When she said that back then, her heart must have been filled with hope for the future, right? But for the Sakiko of today, those words were like a boomerang, slapping her fair cheeks until they were red. A community of fate. The real Soyo also had a glazed look in her eyes, showing just how much this phrase touched her heart. Saki-chan, you were the one who said that we were a community of fate. This impulse in her heart even overrode her reason, making her forget her pretense and directly question Sakiko. So why did you? So I ended it with my own hands. Faced with Soyo's expectant expression, Sakiko's face was cold. Even though her own face was practically swollen from the boomerang's impact, she still put on a brave front. But the community of fate. It was all a lie. Sakiko finally lost her composure, her voice involuntarily rising. What community of fate? Sakiko gritted her teeth, but she couldn't stop her eyes from turning red. Only a fool would believe such words. That's right. The naive her from the past. What a fool she was. Hey, what do you mean by that? This time, Taki couldn't sit still either. After all, Great God Saki's attack range also included her and Tamari. Don't tell me. You were just laughing at me and Tamori back then? Saki-chan, is that really true? Even Tamori looked at her with a hint of sadness. After all, although she wasn't as obsessed as Soyo, everyone back then had indeed gathered because of her, moved by her words about a community of fate. Sakiko's words just now were truly hurtful. If Taki's words had only made Sakiko slightly uncomfortable, then Tamori's gaze truly made her feel suffocated. So what? Those 2 words were stuck in her throat, but she couldn't get them out. Because she had a premonition that if she said them, everything would truly be over. No, why am I having such a weak thought? Isn't this what I need? Ever since I put on the customer service headset, I should have known that I am no longer the young lady I used to be. I can no longer have anything to do with the bonds of a band. So, let me be the one to end it all. You all. Stop talking. Just before everything seemed to become irreversible, Matsumi Wakaba finally spoke up. Huh? On what grounds? From Taki-chan's perspective, it had always been this baffling woman who was hurting Tamari. Because Sakiko is crying. Although there were no tears on her face, Matsumi Wakabe could feel that Sakiko's heart was weeping. I am not. However, the powder keg that had already been lit showed her no gratitude. Matsumi, are you pitying me? That look of sadness and pity, as she perceived it, from Matsumi Wakabe was something the intensely proud Sakiko could not bear. This is just too pathetic, Sakiko. Seeing that the situation was about to truly explode, Kamijo Matsumi finally spoke up. You really are so high and mighty, aren't you? Only believing in your own judgment, without any intention of understanding others' thoughts. In the original future, Sakiko had once used this to evaluate Matsumi Wakabe. But he felt that these words were more suited for Sakiko herself. Alright, everyone stop fighting. Because Soyo had completely frozen up, it was Anon, who had nothing to do with the matter, who ended up being the peacemaker. I believe what Sakiko-chan said back then definitely came from the heart. Her reason for quitting. She must have had her reasons. And Sakiko-chan, Matsumi-chan was clearly concerned about you just now. Your attitude towards her was too harsh, wasn't it? Even Anon, the Yuri outsider, couldn't help but speak up for Matsumi Wakabe. In any case, can we all just watch the anime properly? And so, the war was temporarily halted due to the intervention of Saint Anon. Soyo, afraid of angering Sakiko again like she just had, didn't press the issue any further. And the mental fortitude of a working adult was indeed not something a girl from an ivory tower like Soyo could compare to. Even after having her defenses broken, Sakiko was able to calmly sit back down. At this point, the anime had progressed to the scene where Kraichik was practicing together for the first time in the recording studio. Should I sing? The on-screen Tamari seemed nervous and tense. Tamari, can you not sing no matter what? The girls sat together, troubled by the fact that Tamari couldn't bring herself to sing. Is there a problem somewhere? I've never sung in front of people before. Then came a scene that was somewhat unexpected for Anon. The vocalist is the face of the band, right? Taki frowned at Tamari, her tone cold. Why her? In fact, it wasn't strange for the pressure freak Taki to say something like this. What was strange was the target of her pressure. In Anon's impression, Tamari was practically Taki's beloved parent. And she's even pressuring Tamari? Good grief, she's that unfilial? I didn't know Tamari well back then. Taki said, looking somewhat ashamed under Anon's strange gaze. So that's why. Taki-chan struggled for a long time but couldn't come up with an excuse, ultimately choosing to apologize. I'm sorry, Tamari. Looking back now, she also regretted having pressured her before. Tamari is so fragile and cute, and I actually pressured her. I'm the worst. It's okay. Tamari naturally wouldn't blame Taki for this and just gently shook her head. And in the anime, besides Miss Taki, no one else had a problem with Tamari being the lead singer even though she couldn't sing. Why me? The scene changed, and it was now nighttime on a large bridge. Tamari looked at the traffic flowing below and asked this question. Because you were the one who wrote the lyrics. White Sakiko stood to the side, her expression gentle. It's definitely better if the author herself sings it. Your lyrics are the cry of your heart. Saying this, White Sakiko walked to the edge of the bridge and let out a shout that would become an iconic scene. I want to become human. Saki-chan. Tamari's voice trembled slightly. It was probably from this moment on that this girl, who was like a white moonlight, came to live in her heart. It had to be said, who wouldn't be captivated by a White Sakiko like this? Even Tamari, remembering her past gentleness, had her eyes soften. It was just a pity that the moonlight of the past was now shrouded by the shadow of reality. And the figure in Tamari's heart had, at some point, changed from that moonlight to a certain boy. Chapter 53. Even if that's the truth, it's still hard to believe. Although she felt it was wrong, Anon still couldn't help but mutter. But they're actually the same person. Are you fucking done yet? Great God, Saki was on the verge of snapping. I know you all prefer the old me, but there's no need to keep emphasizing it, right? After the on-screen comforting of Tamari on the bridge, the anime's scene shifted back to the recording studio. Want to become a real? Hey, do you want to sing or not? The moment I walk in, I see Taki pressuring Tamari. Clearly, at this stage, Miss Taki wasn't feeling very filial. Reiki. It's already progress that she can sing out loud now. Although it was only surface-level gentleness, the Soyo of this time was a true mom. Not yet competing with Matsumi Wakabe's father for his job. Life is hard. Taki sighed. But she was able to sing on the footbridge. This was White Sakiko. The footbridge? Do you get nervous in a recording studio? I see. Soyo : ah. The Tsukanamori king of ideas began to employ her world-shocking wisdom. And so, the group moved to a karaoke box. This place is. It's a karaoke box. Have you never been here before? I've only heard about it from my classmates. This was White Sakiko. I have one at my house. This was Mutsumi Wakaba, exuding the aura of a rich girl with her first sentence. Is Mutsumi-chan's family that rich too? Anon suddenly felt like she was poor. But then she remembered that Mutsumi's father was a senior figure to Soyo's family, so it seemed natural. Are all these drinks included? In the anime, White Sakiko was now standing in front of the drink machine, her eyes filled with the clear-headed foolishness of a university student. Just get whatever you want to drink. Reiki-san, you're so used to this. Not really. Just then, Tamori lightly pressed a button on the drink machine, and two different colored drinks flowed out. The drink came out. Did you see that just now? PFFT. Miss Anon, watching this scene, finally couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing, drawing the attention of the other girls. I didn't mean to laugh at Sakiko. She said, immediately explaining herself awkwardly. I just thought the Sakiko-chan in the anime was too cute. Did all of this really happen to you guys? More or less. Taki replied. I see. What on earth happened to Sakiko-chan to make her change into the person she is now? What did she go through to turn that innocent and gentle young lady into the person she is today? In fact, Soyo was also very curious. Where did the gentle Sakiko of the past go? The me of today, do you all hate me that much? Sakiko finally couldn't help but speak, instantly ending the conversation. Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. Seeing Anon finally drop the subject, Sakiko withdrew her gaze. However, when she looked at the anime again, her eyes were a little dark. Their acknowledgement of her past was a denial of her present, making it impossible for her to continue to escape. So, where did that gentle her of the past go? After a moment's thought, Sakiko came up with the answer. She sold her off, in exchange for firewood, rice, oil, salt, and beer. That's right. The white Sakiko they admired was actually that cheap. A sarcastic arc formed on the girl's lips. It was unclear if it was directed at them or at herself. And in stark contrast to reality, the white Sakiko in the anime looked so happy and blissful. Even the doll like Mutsumi was smiling. It made Anon wonder, that Mutsumi-chan can actually smile? So that was the former cry chick? Everyone looks so happy. That's right. Back then, everyone was so happy. Anon's unconscious muttering made Soyo smile, but thinking of what happened next, her expression turned sad again. But in the end, Soyo unconsciously fiddled with her index finger, unable to stop herself from casting a resentful gaze at Great God Saki, like a divorced woman questioning her former unfaithful husband. Back then, Crychick was as united as they could be. Crychick is over. Great God Saki seemed unmoved by Soyo's gaze. Sakiko, my heart is already as hard as a rock. Nothing can hurt me anymore. Anime? Harukaj. Sakiko? Kaji Kanda Kokoro Furuuru Manazashi, a numb heart, a trembling gaze, seriously, again? Hearing the intro to Harukaj slowly begin to play on the TV, Sakiko truly couldn't hold it together. Why do they have to play Harukaj? But soon, she adjusted her mood. So what if it's Harukaj? I'm not the same person I was that day. Sekai Dabakawa Hitribachi Data, in this world, I was all alone, Trukoto Shikashiranai Haruwa, the spring that only knows how to scatter. In fact, the expression on Sakiko's face did not change much after this. After all, a person won't fall into the same pit twice. A trick that has been used once, how could you expect it to work on her again? Wrong. It absolutely could. Tada tada kotoba oke kanagat, just scribbling down words, kitai dake munashe wa kataitmo, even though I know it's pointless to hope, the on-screen Tamari sang, slowly extending her hand towards white Sakiko. Doesn't this scene look familiar? That's right. She had seen a similar scene before at Bun Animation. Only that time, the person Tamori reached for was not her, but Kamijo Matsumi. Yes, she already knew. But why? Why do you have to emphasize, over and over, the fact that Tamari has been stolen away by a certain man? The anime seemed to be saying, look how much she cared about you, how much she liked you. But this girl, whose heart was once filled with her, was pushed into someone else's arms by her own hands. That's right. It was she who personally cut the bond between them. Having left you, what right do I have to care now? Sakiko tried to convince herself of this, but she couldn't stop the sorrow in her heart. However, this time, she didn't burst into tears. Her eyes just turned red. For Tamari to be happy, isn't that what she wanted? Even if there is no place for her in that happiness. Crying? Just as the girl was about to hold back her tears, a certain boy had, at some point, leaned over, asking with what seemed like curiosity. Sakiko. The tears instantly welled up in the girl's eyes. She bit her lip and turned her head to the other side, not wanting to deal with him. However, he moved his position and leaned in again. Yo, she's really crying. Sakiko Chapter 54 I'll fucking This time, Great God Saki truly couldn't hold it together. Crying, she clenched her fists, wanting to engage Kamijo Matsumi in a fair samurai duel. Calm down. However, seeing this, Anon, with her 100% success rate grab skill, quickly and deftly hugged her. Saki-chan, calm down, don't do it. Why are we about to fight just from watching an anime? However, Anon's words clearly couldn't persuade the already incensed Great God Saki. Don't hold me back. Let me kill this bastard. Saki-chan. In the end, it was Tamari's highly recognizable voice that finally brought her back to her senses. Don't be angry anymore, please. Tamari said, taking Sakiko's hand, her tone pleading. Feeling the soft, warm touch in her palm, Sakiko's heart was filled with a mix of emotions. I'm sorry. It was my loss of composure. The girl said, taking a deep breath. She allowed Tamari to lead her by the hand and sit down beside her, squeezing the Taki who had been sitting there to the side. Taki? I'm sorry. Tamari continued, seeing that Sakiko had calmed down. Matsumi has no ill will. This time, it was Sakiko's turn to have a question mark appear above her head. Tamari, you're defending him too much, aren't you? For the first time, Great God Saki felt what Taki had been feeling. She finally understood what it was like for Tamari to side with someone else when facing her. It was sour and astringent, like eating an unripe apricot. I know. Sakiko said with a somewhat forced smile. However, Tamari didn't notice her forced expression and let out a very obvious sigh of relief. Then, the single-threaded girl finally noticed the tears on Sakiko's face. Tears. She immediately grabbed a tissue from the nearby table, wanting to wipe them away. Feeling Tamari's action, even the current Great God Saki instantly blushed. Tamari. You don't have to, I can do it myself. Sakiko quickly took the tissue and dried her tears, the blush on her face gradually fading. Tamari-chan is still as lacking in common sense as ever. Faced with Tamari's concerned gaze, Sakiko felt as if she had suddenly returned to the time before Krychik disbanded, and a smile unconsciously appeared on her face. And in the anime, Tamari had already finished singing Haruikage. And it was now time to read the comments. There are so many comments, look. Soyo said with a smile, handing her phone to Tamari. I was completely moved, I'm going to die without Krychik to watch, feels like ants are crawling all over my body, family, who gets it? This is too good for a good cry. However, there were also some not-so-harmonious comments. The lead singer is trying too hard? Taki, who was beginning to show her filial piety, had her face instantly darken. What the hell is this saying? I'm going to block him? Reiki, blocking is not as good as just muting. Soyo suggested. Watching this interesting scene, Anon couldn't help but chuckle. However, Sakiko, watching the scene in the anime, had the smile completely fade from her face. If I remember correctly. The anime then gave Sakiko a close-up. While the other members of Krychik were happily reading comments, White Sakiko frowned, her expression suddenly turning sad. Then, the scene changed, and what appeared was somewhat unexpected, yet seemed to be within reason. I came today to tell everyone something. It was the scene that had already been broadcast at the beginning of the first episode. The scene of Great God Saki quitting the band. I've decided to quit Krychik. White Sakiko disappeared from this point on. Great God Saki had become the version of her that Anon was familiar with. Again? Watching the scene in the anime, Soyo felt a pain in her stomach. Although it was something that had already happened, no matter how many times she saw Sakiko quit Krychik, she couldn't help but feel sad. However, there was someone else whose expression was even uglier than hers. But, if Saki-chan quits? Tamari's voice was choked with tears, as if she was about to cry at any second. Can you stop saying such naive things? However, faced with a sad Tamari, Sakiko's choice was not to comfort, but to reprimand. Aren't you the one who needs to practice the most, Tamari? But what have you been doing until now? Her face pale, the real Sakiko subconsciously let go of Tamari's hand. What right did the her who had hurt her in the past have to enjoy her gentleness? The subsequent development in the anime was more or less the same as in the first episode. Taki and Sakiko went from arguing to almost fighting. And then, it was the Cucumber Sword Princess who delivered the final blow. I have never had fun playing in a band. As she said this, as if it weren't enough, she twisted the knife further. Never once. The real Matsumi Wakabe suddenly clenched her fists. Even now, she couldn't get over the words she had said back then. Then, she looked resentfully at the man who was, in name, her fiancé. Isn't showing this scene once enough? What's the meaning of repeatedly whipping the corpse? And in the anime, as Matsumi spoke, a sound like ringing in the ears appeared, and then the screen suddenly went black. Finally, came Tamari's monologue. I'm the only one who can't cry. Why is that? Am I too cold? Or, as a person, am I missing something? Unlike everyone else, I don't have something precious. I also want to cry for something like that, just like everyone else. The screen showed Sakiko in her Hanyoka uniform, a red flower pinned to her chest. She noticed Tamori looking at her from the side, froze for a moment, and then walked away as if nothing had happened. As if all their past experiences were fake, as if the two had never known each other. If I had something like that. The image in the anime began to blur, and Tamori's voice once again filled with tears. Then it must be Krychek. Futsu Toka Trimit Nataru, normal and taken for granted. What are they? As the ending theme slowly began to play, Sakiko's face had turned deathly pale. She had only wanted to cut ties with her past self, but she never thought she would hurt Tamori so deeply. Tamori had considered Krychek the meaning of her being human, but she had destroyed it with her own hands. And yet, she, of all people, had dared to crave Tamori's gentleness. For the first time, Sakiko realized just how despicable she was. Saki-chan. This time, it was Tamori who was crying. Just as the anime said, she would only cry for Krychek. Just like at this moment. Why? Did you quit Krychek? Was it something I did wrong? Tamori's crying wasn't a violent flood, but a gentle sob, like a fine drizzle. However, it was this Tamori that made Sakiko feel suffocated by guilt. Soyo had asked her this question countless times. For the first time, she had no idea how to reply. The damage was already done. Could a simple apology really make up for it? As for going back, did she still have that right? The countless feelings of guilt and self-blame in her heart converged, but when they reached her lips, only four, seemingly unrelated words remained. I wish you happiness. And then, Sakiko, no longer able to control her tears, stood up and fled once again. Chapter 55 Saki-chan. Watching Great God Saki's tearful, fleeing back, Soyo belatedly stood up and chased after her. This scene was like a reenactment of what had happened at Bun Animation. Why does this plot seem so familiar? Anon thought, scratching her head. And Tamori, after hearing Great God Saki's I wish you happiness, completely broke down, covering her eyes with her arm and beginning to cry softly. Tamori. Seeing her so heartbroken, Taki's own heart ached terribly. That's Sakiko. She's just too much. Tamori shouldn't even talk to her. What's with that attitude? Watching Taki furiously lash out at the departed Sakiko, even Matsumi Wakaba, who was the most biased towards her besides Soyo, couldn't find a way to defend her. After all, although she knew of Sakiko's difficulties, the fact that she had hurt Tamori and the others was undeniable. Therefore, she could only remain silent. Tamori, don't mind that girl. Looking at Tamori, whose face was stained with tears like a pear blossom in the rain, Taki held her shoulders and comforted her softly, a sense of urgency in her voice. You still have us. We will always be by your side. That's right, Tamori, you still have us. Anon said, sitting down on her other side, her voice gentle. Taki-chan, Ano-chan, thank you. Listening to the two girls' comforting words, Tamari's crying gradually subsided, and she spoke through her sobs. Matsumi. Then, under the somewhat stiff gazes of Anon and Taki, she threw herself into Kamijo Matsumi's arms. Wait, Tamari, we're the ones comforting you. Why are you running into his arms? Don't leave me. For Tamari, he and Sakiko were too similar in some ways. Both had reached out a hand to her when she was lost in her past. Therefore, after what happened with Sakiko, she was terrified that he would leave her too. On the other side, Anon and Taki, sitting on the sofa, exchanged a silent look, suddenly feeling a bit superfluous. I should be under the car, not in the car, watching how sweet you two are. However, Tamari seemed to finally remember them. She let go of him and turned to take the two girls' hands. And Anon and Ricky, thank you. The tears on Tamari's face had not yet dried, but she tried her best to smile. And Rana, the cat, who had been watching the show from the side, tilted her head slightly. I have a part in this too? The cat was confused, but the cat did not spoil the mood. Instead, like a real cat, she snuggled up against Tamori's body. We also have to be together, in a band for a lifetime. Seeing this, what little resentment the two girls had in their hearts all vanished into thin air. Faced with a Tamori like this, what could they do? Of course, they chose to forgive her. Tamari, I will be by your side for a lifetime, and be in a band with you for a lifetime. Taki said, gripping her hand excitedly, tears welling up in her own eyes. A lifetime, huh? Anon's voice was a bit helpless. Although they had been together for a while now, she still couldn't quite handle these emotionally heavy women who threw around a lifetime at the drop of a hat. But, having already been captured by the black hole's gravity, what could she do? Forget it. A lifetime it is. Interesting. This was the cat, cuddling with Tamari. The band, which had been just barely held together before, now seemed more harmonious than ever. Great God Saki's flight, though it had hurt Tamari, had also strengthened the cohesion of this new band, making the four girls even closer. Wait, four? So, guess who's not included? At the same time, as if influenced by the atmosphere, Matsumi Wakabe couldn't help but look at the boy beside her. A lifetime. Will she also be with him for a lifetime? But just then, a startled cry interrupted the harmonious atmosphere, and Matsumi Wakabe's expression instantly changed. Because, if she hadn't misheard, that was Sakiko's voice. Saki-chan. Tamori also recognized her voice and murmured her name. Tamari, why should we care about her? Taki was clearly still fuming. What does that girl's business have to do with us? But, although Great God Saki had just hurt her feelings, with Tamori's personality, she naturally couldn't hold a grudge against her. Even so, what if something really happened to Saki-chan? We can't just ignore her, can we? Anon voiced the thoughts in Tamari's heart. This time, Taki also fell silent. After all, although she held a grudge against her, she obviously didn't want anything bad to happen to her. I'll go down and take a look. In the end, it was naturally Kamijo Matsumi, the host, who went down to check on the situation. However, just as he got downstairs, he ran right into a tearful Great God Saki running towards him. Sakiko was barefoot on one foot. As if she didn't see him, she brushed past him, covering her face with one arm, and limped up the stairs. This scene, filled with a sense of déjà vu, instantly gave him a strange premonition. Then, he took a few steps forward and, unsurprisingly, saw the culprit responsible for this result. That's right. Who else could it be but Miss Soyo? Looking at the shoe in her left hand and the stocking in her right, it wasn't hard to imagine what had just happened. Seriously, sis? I was just joking. You actually did it? Even Kamijo Matsumi was on the verge of losing his composure at this point. And besides, didn't I only tell you to pull off her shoe? Why did you take off her stocking too? One could only say, as expected of you, Miss Soyo. He once thought that Matsumi Wakabe and Taki had the strength to threaten her position. Now it seemed that in this era of Soyo, they were merely mortals. Liar. At this moment, Soyo also noticed him. Her eyes, which had lost their light, looked over. You lied to me. Then he watched as Miss Soyo, who had seemed on the verge of turning to the dark side, instantly broke down in tears. I did what you said. It didn't work at all. Wait, who knew you would actually be crazy enough to believe me? It's all your fault. Seeing him not reply, Soyo didn't care. She wiped her tears with her arm and sobbed as she spoke. However, although she looked truly pitiful, the sight of her holding a shoe in one hand and a stocking in the other made it impossible to feel sad. In fact, it was strangely comical. You're laughing. Hearing his laugh, the still crying Soyo instantly saw red. Ahem. Kamijo Matsumi dodged Miss Soyo's attack while suppressing the expression on his face. Miss Soyo, please rest assured. I have received strict training. No matter how funny it is, I will not laugh. Unless I can't help it. Chapter 56. Although Kamijo Matsumi's combat power was less than that of a large goose due to his poor physical condition, Soyo, with a shoe and a stocking in her hands, was clearly not in a good position to fight either. And so, with one's power decreased and the other's increased, Soyo swung her fists until she was panting, but failed to land any effective attacks. It's all your fault. Seeing that her efforts were futile, Soyo stopped and began to complain. I can't believe I fell for your nonsense. Thinking back now, Soyo found it incredible. How could she have done such a thing? Don't tell me I was infected by this bizarre creature. The girl's thoughts couldn't help but drift back to a few minutes ago. She still hoped, just as before, that Great God Saki would come back. But Sakiko, perhaps because of what had just happened, had an even worse attitude than before. Even Soyo couldn't help but feel wronged. She had done so much for Sakiko, even Matsumi Wakabe. One could only say that Soyo's sunk costs were too high, there was no turning back. If she couldn't make Sakiko have a change of heart, everything she had done before would become a joke, and she would become a complete and utter clown. And just at that moment, she remembered the idea Kamijo Matsumi had mentioned before. She recalled all her past pursuits and efforts, only to be met with cold words and rejection. In that instant, dark emotions overwhelmed her reason. She didn't remember what happened after that. She only remembered coming to her senses and finding the shoe and stocking in her hands, and the shocked and humiliated expression on Great God Saki's face. In that moment, Soyo experienced a feeling she had never had before. The gentle and considerate white Sakiko was alluring, but this Sakiko before her now, showing an expression she had never seen before, wasn't she also a different kind of delicious? But in just a moment, The girl erased this dangerous thought from her mind. What if Sakiko hates me because of this? The girl worried. You don't have to worry about that. The scumbag said, a rare kind word from him. For Sakiko to hate you, she didn't need what happened today. And the facts proved that the girl was still too naive. You. Miss Soyo was, naturally, seeing red again. Does this bastard want to anger me to death so he can inherit my family's duplex high-rise? Forget it, I'm not talking to you anymore. Soyo hadn't expected to get any comfort from him in the first place. She had just been venting instinctively, but she found that if she continued talking, she might actually die of anger. Give this back to Sakiko. The girl stuffed Great God Saki's shoe and stocking into his hands and said with a listless tone. Give them back to Sakiko? Hearing this, his expression became strange, as if he couldn't believe she would make such a decision. What do you mean by that? Soyo instantly understood his meaning, and her face flushed. Do you think I'm some kind of pervert? To this, he reserved his opinion. Seeing him not reply, Soyo also regained her composure, crossing her arms with a cold snort. I'm going back. With that, she turned to leave. Hey, wait a minute. Seeing this, he stuffed the things that had been occupying his hands into his pocket and then grabbed her arm. How are you getting back? I'll walk back myself. Soyo said, turning her head away as if in a fit of pique. It's none of your business. If you're really that determined to suffer, you could just come to a hotel with me. There's no need for this. What did you say? There's a car, but you won't take it, insisting on walking back on your own 2 feet.